The dark night sky seemed alive with energy. As flashes of light danced through the clouds, a grassy land with mountains and trees could be seen. A sharp lightning ripped through the air. A male figure fell from the sky with fear on his face. The next moment, the ground quivered as he crashed into the earth, landing in a faceplant. His entire body hit the ground with a thud, scattering dirt and grass. He carefully turned his body, rolling onto his back with a groan. His breath was rasped and uneven. He coughed, dust spilling from his lips. Unsteady, he looked around and his eyes widened. Everything seemed unfamiliar to him. The place and even his own body. Suddenly, he realized that he should have been killed in the car accident that had happened earlier. How was he still alive? It was then revealed that his name was Kei, a college student with unbelievable talents. Yet, here he was in an unfamiliar place, in an unknown body. He felt like his body was an icy corpse that could not move. Suddenly, he heard a rustling sound and saw a radiant figure of a girl who appeared almost fairy-like. Mesmerized by her beauty, he wondered what a beautiful girl would possibly be doing in such a strange place. However, his awe quickly turned to confusion as he saw her sliding down her panties. Her backside came dangerously close to his face, and he screamed hysterically, startling the girl. She froze mid-action, turned to look at him and flustered. He managed to stammer out shyly. Without a word, she immediately flew away into the sky on a sword. The world around him felt surreal. His head spun as fragments of memories began flooding back. In those memories, he was inhabiting another body, one that belonged to the unlucky prince-in-law of Huayuan's empire. That prince-in-law had been a woeful orphan, but possessed a remarkable spiritual root, so rare it was said to appear only once in 1,000 years. He had been selected as the prince-in-law at a very young age. The emperor had bestowed upon him innumerable treasures to aid in his cultivation, and within a span of 6 years, he managed to break through to the core formation stage. However, on the day of his breakthrough, he decided to consummate his marriage. It was a night that sealed his fate. The princess betrayed him, stealing not only his cultivation, but also his extraordinary talent and spiritual root. Overnight, the newly appointed prince-in-law was reduced to a powerless peasant and was disrespectfully thrown out of the royal palace. On his way to the border, the emperor's soldiers executed him on direct orders, leaving his lifeless body abandoned in the wilderness. Emerging from the memory trail, Kei came to terms with the fact that he had been transported to another world. A deep sense of pity overwhelmed him, and he cursed his misfortune, shrieking in frustration about why he could not have been transported to the night of the wedding instead. Just as he was lamenting, a loud feminine voice pierced through the air, howling. The fairy came running towards him, bellowing about how he dared to peek at her. He attempted to calm her down. The girl, however, refused to listen and began chasing him. While running, a thought struck him. He still had the prince-in-law's token of the Huayuan Empire. Quickly pulling out the token, he roared, demanding to know how she dared to disrespect the prince-in-law, who was capable of destroying her entire family.
Do you want to know the name of this manga, along with all the manga names of the recaps we did in our channel? How about also the chapter numbers our recaps end? You can simply ask the names in our Discord community for free or become a donor to get them all in one place. You can either be a donor in Patreon or be a member in our YouTube channel. Just scan this QR code or go to the link in the description to become a donor. Moreover, becoming a donor automatically makes you a VIP member of our Discord server with over tens of thousands of members.
The girl was taken aback, realizing that he might indeed be the prince-in-law. Seeing her shocked expression, Kei regained his confidence, marveling at how he could still bluff his way out of trouble. Out of nowhere, he heard a voice congratulating him. Player Kei has activated the bluffing system. The voice explained that this system would guide him to conquer the world. As a result of his bluff, he had gained a bluff point, which could be used to purchase items from the city's shop. After further analysis, the system declared that the player was weak and required extra help to survive in this world. Hence, he was awarded a grand welcoming package. As the voice faded away, Kei realized that as long as he kept bluffing, he could acquire useful rewards. Determined to deal with the crazy woman first, he continued his tactical plan, proclaiming that the prince-in-law would never lay hands on any girl, even if she were the princess. While he admitted to himself that she was undeniably beautiful, it did not mean she could simply fly away on her sword. He declared that the prince-in-law was an extraordinarily talented and skilled cultivator, so there was no reason to fear her. At this, the girl pointed her sword at him, and he interpreted it as a challenge. With a smirk, he beckoned her with his fingers and boldly invited her to exchange some moves. Just then, the mysterious voice echoed once more, congratulating him for earning another bluff point through his bluffing. Realization struck him how skilled he was at bluffing and how this game seemed tailor-made for him. He then remembered the notification that mentioned a gift and tried to access the system again with his fingers. An interface appeared with a gift icon, which he touched. The system declared that he had received an early-stage experience pill, granting him 10,000 experience points upon consumption. It also awarded him 2 early-stage divine travel talismans, which would help him teleport to any location within 5 kilometers. Additionally, he had been granted the early-stage immemorial 5-element technique. The system then detected that his ruined spiritual root could not qualify for cultivation, so it proceeded to repair all of his spiritual roots. He was shocked. The sensation was so familiar. He had regained the power he once had before the princess stole his spiritual roots. The system had repaired his metal, earth, fire, and wood spiritual roots, all to the highest quality. He felt powerful and immensely happy, believing that he could now conquer the whole world and avenge himself. He cursed the princess and the emperor, but stopped midway when the girl pointed her sword at him and remarked how crazy he was, being the prince-in-law and still cursing the emperor. He then proceeded to get rid of her by activating the newcomer's gift, technique, and the experience pill. He tapped on the pill, and the system announced that he had learnt the immemorial 5 elements technique. He had also gained early-stage experience and earned 10,000 experience points and leveled up to condensing stage 10th layer. The 5 spiritual roots are born from each other and also oppose each other. Hence, its power when used together is 5 times greater than the power of a single element. He appeared speechless when she suddenly attacked him and said that she only respected him as prince-in-law for not being rude. He defended himself by asking her not to judge him by his manners, but then he proceeded to activate his immemorial 5-element technique, using the water element, which knocked the sword out of her hands, leaving her dazed. She wondered how he wasn't even at the 6th layer of foundation establishment. Full of rage, he then activated the earth element and roared about how she had wanted to kill him when he had already explained that all of this was a misunderstanding. The girl was in disbelief as her whole body became entangled in a lightning blue rope, leaving her unable to rise from the ground. He then attacked her. Just as he was about to attack her, lightning struck, illuminating the entire environment. A furious voice ordered him to stop. The intense light made him feel dizzy, and out of nowhere 3 male figures appeared, all enraged. One of them shrieked, demanding how he dared to think of committing such a sin in his territory. Fuming with rage, the man swished his hand, and fire fumes materialized, launching an attack at Kwe. Terrified for his life, Kwe turned and ran, activating his earth element spiritual chi to escape at an incredibly high speed. However, with a loud thud, he crashed face first into the ground. One of the men, bewildered, asked how he could possibly be that fast. The master of the group observed him closely, and remarked that he felt the presence of earth element spiritual chi on him. He then exclaimed that people from the Tuyuan Empire were known for their exceptional speed, and concluded that Kwe must be a spy. Ru, the fairy-like girl, intervened, and explained to the master that the boy had claimed to be the prince-in-law of the Huoyuan Empire, and even possessed the prince-in-law's token. She argued that if he were killed, the royals of the Huoyuan Empire might use it as an excuse to attack the Tianwu sect. However, the master dismissed her claim, stating that the prince-in-law of the Huoyuan Empire was an extraordinarily talented young man, the likes of whom were seen only once in 1,000 years. He insisted there was no way this boy could be the prince-in-law. With a dismissive tone, the master criticized Ru for her lack of experience, remarking that living in the mountains had made her too trusting. This remark infuriated her. The master then handed her an illuminating golden rope, the deity confining rope, instructing her to chase down Kenkwe. Seeing this, immediately recognized it as one of the divine weapons. Ru reasoned that if the master personally chased Kwe, it could be seen as bullying, and outsiders might ridicule them. However, if she used the divine weapon, it would be perfectly acceptable. Kwe, realizing the divine weapon would likely seal his fate, kept his composure and boldly exclaimed that as the prince-in-law of the Huoyuan Empire, she was underestimating his ability to fight back. Unimpressed, Ru attacked him with her hands, declaring that he had asked for it. Kwe quickly understood that his bluff had failed. An interface appeared, notifying him that his bluffing attempt had been unsuccessful and he was not rewarded with any points. The master, growing impatient, ordered Ru to kill him with her sword, but Kwe continued to defend himself. Enraged, Ru attacked him again, shouting at him for daring to insult her master. He confidently declared that he would change his name if she managed to catch him. Without hesitation, he pulled out the divine travel talisman and vanished into thin air. Everyone around was left utterly flabbergasted. The master, still processing what had just occurred, speculated that Kwe might have used the long-lost spatial teleportation talisman, an artifact of incredible rarity and power. Immediately he barked orders to search the area thoroughly, hoping to find any treasures or traces Kwe might have left behind. Meanwhile, Ru stood frozen, her mind racing with thoughts about who this mysterious man could possibly be. She replayed the events in her head, torn between disbelief and intrigue. Kay, on the other hand, found himself crashing onto an unfamiliar ground. He stood tall, swelling with pride at his cleverness and quick thinking. He marveled at his own audacity for bluffing and fleeing so flawlessly, silently thanking the divine travel talisman for its remarkable power. To reward his cunning, the system interface appeared, notifying him that he had gained 1 bluffing point and an additional 10 points for successfully escaping after bluffing. His heart brimmed with pride and satisfaction. Looking around, Kay's excitement quickly turned into dread as he realized where the talisman had taken him. It was none other than the Tianwu sect's territory. Worse, the place seemed eerily similar to their rumored basement. His chest tightened as the realization sank in. If anyone from the sect discovered him, his life would surely be over. Surveying his surroundings cautiously, his eyes fell upon a chest and an assortment of shiny, alluring items scattered around. The treasures gleamed, and he couldn't suppress the thought that this might be the fabled treasure pavilion of the Tianwu sect. His curiosity overwhelmed him, and he crept closer to the chest and opened it. His eyes widened at the sight of a magnificent golden sword lying within. The weapon radiated an aura of immense power. He stared at it in awe, momentarily paralyzed by its brilliance. However, doubts soon clouded his mind. The golden sword was clearly no ordinary weapon. It was likely an artifact of great significance to the sect. Kay hesitated, his thoughts racing. Could he really steal it and escape unscathed? The consequences of such a bold move loomed large in his mind. He weighed the risks carefully, torn between the allure of the sword and the undeniable danger it posed. Yet deep down, he knew that opportunities like this didn't come often. He screamed with joy, overwhelmed by the realization of how rich he had suddenly become. Laughing to himself, he began collecting the treasures scattered around him. However, as the pile of treasures grew, he quickly realized he couldn't possibly carry all the items in his hands. Frustrated but determined, he asked the system if it could provide him with a way to store everything. The interface appeared promptly, offering him an option to choose a spatial storage bag. Elated, he eagerly selected the bag, and within moments all the treasures were safely stored away inside it. He marveled at the convenience and power of the system, feeling unstoppable. Yet, as he glanced around the room, his eyes fell on more treasures that remained untouched. A pang of greed washed over him. Leaving all this behind would be a waste, he thought. Deciding to prioritize, he focused on collecting the pills, carefully selecting the most valuable ones with a sly grin. Meanwhile, outside the basement doors, someone called out Senior Brother Liang to fetch the yuan pills from the basement for the upcoming month. The voice echoed through the corridor as footsteps approached the door. The door creaked open, and Senior Brother Liang stepped inside. His eyes immediately fell on empty pill vials scattered across the floor. His expression darkened as he unsheathed his sword and announced in a stern voice for the thief to come forward. Scanning the room, his gaze landed on Kuei, who was frozen in place like a child caught stealing candy. Liang's eyes narrowed with suspicion and fury. Liang demanded to know what Kuei was doing trespassing in the Tianwu sect's treasure pavilion, his voice cold and authoritative. Kuei, despite the tension, stood up with feigned pride. He knew he still had another divine travel talisman and could use it to escape if necessary. With an air of confidence, he exclaimed that he did not even know his name, yet he dared to point his sword at him, and he did not take kindly to such disrespect. Liang, unfazed, scoffed and replied that he was not holding a sword at him. Then, without warning, he activated his fire element spiritual chi and launched an attack. The flames roared toward Kuei, forcing him to react quickly. Realizing that Liang was far stronger and more difficult to deal with than he anticipated, Kuei turned to flee. However, his attempt to escape was in vain. Liang moved swiftly, striking him with a fiery blast. The blow jarred the sword in Liang's grasp into Kuei's stomach. Pain shot through Kuei's body as blood spurted from the wound and dripped from his mouth. He staggered, clutching his stomach, his vision blurring. Liang's eyes narrowed as he noticed something peculiar. He realized that he had taken all the pills at once. Liang muttered in disbelief. He realized that Kuei must have consumed the Juyuan pills from the pavilion. A single pill could sustain a qi-condensing cultivator for an entire month. Yet Kuei had recklessly swallowed them all at once. Liang assumed he had gone mad, perhaps attempting to end his own life, rather than face punishment for his crimes. As Kuei struggled to remain conscious, the system interface appeared before his eyes, notifying him that his body was overloaded with spiritual qi. The system asked if he wanted to activate the self-repair function. Desperate, he immediately responded to activate it at once. His body convulsed as he coughed violently, blood trickling from his lips. The system began its repairs and informed him that the process would consume 1 bluffing point every 2 hours. Kuei sighed in relief, but barely had time to rest before the system delivered another blow. It notified him that the immemorial 5 elements technique he had learned was incomplete and contained only the first part. To fully utilize the spiritual chi within his body, he needed to acquire the second book. The system then displayed the second book, which came with an exorbitant price tag of 100 bluffing points. Q's jaw dropped in utter shock and disbelief. He felt a wave of frustration and disgust wash over him as he realized that despite all his efforts and hard work throughout the day, he couldn't even afford a single book. Liang, observing Kuei's weakened and bloodied state, offered to kill him, stating it would be less painful than prolonging his suffering, but death could be heavier than a mountain, Liang remarked solemnly. Kuei, though barely holding himself together, smirked and replied, or lighter than a feather. With that, he vanished into thin air. Liang froze, stunned. For a moment he assumed Kuei had self-destructed, but his cryptic words lingered in Liang's mind, leaving an unexpectedly profound impact. Meanwhile, Kuei reappeared in a desolate jungle, disoriented but alive. The system interface materialized before him, notifying him that he had gained a bluffing point. He groaned in frustration, feeling cheated that he could only pull 1 bluffing point after all the effort. The realization hit him. He was still far from affording the second book of the immemorial 5 elements technique. On top of that, the self-repair mode would continue to drain 1 bluffing point every 2 hours. The spiritual qi from the yuan pills coursed through his body, intoxicating him, making his movements sluggish and his head spin. Suddenly, the interface reappeared with a health notification. It informed him that his health status had deteriorated severely, and after a scan, the system declared that it would intervene to save him. The system's seemingly benevolent announcement only fueled Ker's irritation that it was supposed to help him conquer the world. As he fumed, a small icon of a book appeared on the interface titled, A Guide to Breaking Your Meridians. His eyes lit up with a cunning idea. With a wicked grin, he clicked on the icon, ready to gamble once again on the system's unpredictable guidance. Kay initially thought that breaking his meridians meant killing himself, but he quickly realized that the system had no intention of asking him to end his life. Instead, the system wanted him to use the excess spiritual qi flooding his body. The qi flowed through his major veins, and with every beat, the veins would be damaged and then repair themselves. This process would not only make the veins stronger, but also enhance his physical body. However, to achieve this, he needed to cultivate in seclusion and endure the excruciating pain of breaking his own meridians. Determined, he pressed 2 fingers against his shoulder and snapped his vein. With a shriek of agony, he fell unconscious, his body enduring unimaginable pain for 2 days and 2 nights. When he finally opened his eyes, sunlight streamed through a window, and fluffy white clouds dotted the sky. Relieved to be alive, he tried to sit up, only to find himself wrapped head to toe in surgical dressings. He let out a scream of pain and coughed, cursing loudly. What kind of doctor treats a patient by turning them into a mummy? How am I supposed to go out and bluff now? He muttered in frustration. Just then, a beautiful woman entered the room, her face lighting up with joy at seeing him awake. She explained that he had been unconscious for several days. She had gone to the mountains to collect herbs when she discovered his bloodied and lifeless body. With the help of her brother Leng, she carried him to safety. She warned him about the dangers of the mountains, especially the beasts lurking there, and advised him to stay away. Kay was momentarily awestruck by her beauty and composure. To impress her, he boasted, "Scared? That word is not even in my vocabulary. I'm a hunter. I was up in the mountains fighting a pack of wolves for 3 days and 3 nights, and I killed them all." The girl frowned, her tone skeptical. "But there have never been wolves in these mountains." She was confused. Flustered, Kay stammered, "They must have come from another mountain. But that's not the point. The point was when I was about to die. A beautiful fairy flew down and saved my life," he said flirtatiously, flashing her a grin. Blushing furiously, she retorted, "I'm not a fairy. From now on you are my fairy," he teased, prompting her to shriek in embarrassment and run out of the room. Outside, she stopped by a tree, her chest heaving as she blushed hard. The system interface suddenly appeared before Kwe, informing him that he had gained 2 bluffing points. Grinning, he thought to himself that all he had to do was keep calling her beautiful, and he will rack up more bluffing points. When he glanced at the interface again, he noticed something peculiar. He was on the verge of a breakthrough. This puzzled him because he thought he was only at the beginning of the 10th layer. Could this progress be a result of healing his broken meridians? If so, the pain had been worth it. Without hesitation, he reactivated the self-repair mode. The system deducted 1 bluffing point, and instantly the surgical dressings flew into the air. His dried blood vanished, and his skin healed perfectly across his entire body. Feeling invincible again, he stood up, exhaling in satisfaction. He was happy that he was full of power again. At that moment, the door swung open, and Jia entered. Her eyes widened in horror as she stared at him. Without saying a word, she slammed the door shut and fled. He screamed to clear out the misunderstanding that it was not what she was thinking, but his words were lost in thin air. Xia exclaimed in shock, questioning how Kay could get up when the physician had strictly instructed him to rest. Flustered, Kay quickly grabbed the quilt from the bed and wrapped it around himself, hastily asking her to find him some clothes. With a frown, she left the room to look for something suitable. As he waited, Kay noticed the faint medicinal smell lingering on the quilt. Bored after a while, he decided to peek outside through the small eye-hole in the door. The sight outside surprised him. The houses were simple, almost primitive, and the village appeared quiet and impoverished, with no one in sight. But then, distant sounds of footsteps and raised voices reached his ears. A group of villagers approached, their weapons drawn, shouting about killing a monster that had been troubling Xia. Alarmed, Kay was convinced they were coming for him. However, to his confusion, the leader of the group approached him with a polite manner, assuring him that he should continue resting and that they would handle the brute causing trouble. Baffled, Kay hesitated before asking if they weren't there for him. The leader firmly denied it, explaining that their target was the beast Xia had mentioned. They added that once the beast was dealt with, its meat could be used for a feast. Relieved, Kay let them leave without further questions. Once the group was gone, he sighed and began searching the room for clothes. Opening the cupboard, he found nothing but a red embroidered cloth. With no better option, he used it to cover himself and then wrapped the quilt around his shoulders like a cape. Feeling ridiculous but having no choice, he stepped outside. The villagers turned toward him, their eyes widening in disbelief. They whispered among themselves about his speed and speculated that he must be a master from some distant land. Suddenly, the system interface appeared in front of Quer, notifying him that he had unlocked a new achievement, the Unseen Bluff. The achievement earned him 5 bluff tokens. Swelling with pride, he thought to himself that even when he did nothing, his brilliance shone through. A thunderous roar broke his thoughts. The beast the villagers had been searching for appeared on the horizon. The villagers raised their weapons, preparing for battle, while Xia stood in front, commanding everyone to retreat to safety. Kay stepped forward, parting the crowd with a dramatic flourish of his quilt cape. Declaring that the beast was his to handle, he walked forward without hesitation. Xia turned to him in alarm, pleading with him to rest because he was still injured. The village chief also expressed his concerns, saying that they respected his will to fight, but that his current state made it too dangerous. Kay dismissed their worries with a wave of his hand. He claimed that he had fought hundreds of beasts in his time, and invited them to ask Xia to verify his claims. Xia, confused, muttered to herself that she thought he had mentioned wolves earlier. Before anyone could respond, the beast lunged towards Xia with terrifying speed. Acting on instinct, Kay propelled himself forward, flying through the air like a hero out of legend. Xia tried to stop Kay, as he had suffered severe injuries, but she was left baffled when he began fighting the beast with remarkable ease. With a single powerful kick, he sent the beast reeling, leaving the villagers utterly dumbfounded. The system interface appeared, notifying him that he had gained 3 bluff tokens for his actions and another 8 tokens for an unseen bluff. He warned Xia to stay back and be careful, then launched himself at the beast once more. This time, he punched it with all his might, a blow that resonated like thunder. The interface announced that he had successfully slain the horned tiger beast, earning him 6 more bluff tokens and a hefty 1,200 experience points. It also confirmed that he had broken through the foundation establishing stage, achieving a significant level up and unlocking a big level up gift. The system reminded him that he had trained the early stage of his skill, the immemorial 5 elements technique, to its peak. It prompted him to begin the advanced stage, a milestone that filled Kay with immense pride. He marveled at the rewards, realizing that the 1,200 points he earned were worth far more than any experience pill he could have taken. The villagers erupted into cheers, celebrating his victory. In their excitement, they lifted him into the air, tossing him up repeatedly as a show of admiration. Despite his attempts to downplay their praise, calling it excessive, his quilt cape slipped off mid-air, leaving him partially exposed. The village chief quickly called for Xia to fetch some proper clothing for him. Embarrassed, she shyly brought him a set of clothes and fled the scene, her face burning with embarrassment. Kay was left momentarily confused by her reaction, until a young boy in the crowd pointed at his lower half and exclaimed that the red embroidered cloth he was wearing was Xia's dudu. Dudu is a piece of clothing that women from the past wore as their bra. Realizing the misunderstanding, Quay froze, his face flushing with a mix of embarrassment and disbelief. The villagers erupted in laughter, while Kay covered his face and ran away, too mortified to explain. Immersed in a lake, he decided to open the system status that informed him that he had 25 bluff tokens and 200 experience points, which were not enough to exchange for the advanced stage. Then he remembered about the shop in the system and opened it. He got to know that the shop was separated into tier from lowest to highest, starting from Huang, Xuan, Di, Tian, and so on. He realized that the immemorial technique was not expensive, but it was because it belonged to the Tian tier, so he needed a maximum of 5 points for Huang Tide skills. The system notified him that due to his low level he could not shop from the locked parts. There were skills higher than the tier which made the system more interesting. He still decided to look at Huang tier skills, and was astonished to see that it had solitary 9 swords. That meant that the skills from the mortal world were of course incomparable. Xuan had 18 fallen dragon's palms, and he only needed 5 points, so he had to choose carefully. He soon realized that the skills were not that cool. How could he use them for bluffing? After being disappointed by the Xuan tier, he decided to look at the Dai tier and was flabbergasted to see Shattered Lion Tiger Golden Chant, Flame-Splitting Wave Ruler. He thought he hit the jackpot, as all the skills used by the main characters from the different novels from his previous world were all present there. Only one of the skills would be enough to shock others. He took his time to think that he only had 25 tokens, so he had to use them wisely, but they were enough to buy at least one of those books. He decided to select the 6 joint bodies. He was given a dragon soaring the 4 seas, 9 stages of change. The first stage increased his strength and overcame his weaknesses. The second stage doubled his strength. Until he reached the 9th stage, his strength was increased 9 times. He could control the forces of nature. 9 changes of dragon let him be arrogant anywhere. After all this, he did not feel unusual. It was as if he inherited the skill and felt full of energy. The interface notified him about the skill of soaring 9 dragons. He was already on the first stage without any progress. He relaxed, saving the remaining 5 points that might help him to save his life in future, and also the reward of a big level-up gift. He wondered what the reward could be. Perhaps a charming female bodyguard, a Lord tier weapon, or maybe an extremely powerful old man. But to his utter shock, the system granted him a powerful activating recycling skill, a camouflaging puppet, and also a divine travel talisman. Irritated by the camouflaging puppet, he thought what could it possibly do? By touching it, he realized how strong it was. He was about to use the divine travel talisman when he remembered about the activating recycling skill. He asked the system about it, and it notified him that the system could recycle anything for him, whether it was magical weapons, pills, or skills, while converting them into corresponding items to upgrade tokens back to the player. The weapon would return as upgrade tokens for refining weapons, which could upgrade any weapon's tier. Pill types magic recycled would return as upgrade tokens for refining pills, which would upgrade pills' quality and purity. Skill types magically recycled would return as upgrade tokens for refining skills, which would improve one's progress on a skill. It felt has to choose in a rush to recycle them. He considered it a profit and landed on the ground. It was confirmed that the body was of the prince-in-law of the empire, and his plain clothes could not hide his aura. He decided to go back to the house and saw Jia, who was picking up his quilt. He said that he could handle all these chores when they heard some loud noises and thought that it could be another beast. He decided to go look, and Jia tried to stop him. The villagers were sending a guy from the Shui village away because the horned tiger beast was defeated from this village. The man exclaimed that the beast came from their village's rear mountain, and hence they killed them, so they asked for compensation. The villagers said that the mountains were full of the beasts and they rightfully killed it. The man claimed that they stole their beast. The man was Pang Bao, the neighbor's village chief's son, and he uses innate strength, hence the villagers thought they were not good opponents. And as it was payday, and if they did not meet the requirements, the immortals would definitely punish them. Either way, they were going to die, hence they decided to fight against Pang Bao. As they were discussing calling the villagers for help, Pang Bao swished his awfully big sword, exclaiming that it was useless no matter how many people came. Kay appeared to fight him. Xia and the villagers tried to stop him, but he was adamant to fight back. Kay came forward and attacked him, and decided to test the strength of his soaring dragon 9 changes. Light erupted as both the opponents stood against each other. There were loud noises, and Kuei remained still when the system rewarded him 10 bluff tokens and 400 experience points for killing Pang Bao. He could not move, still processing that he actually killed someone. The villagers started lowering in front of him and chanting Sire Immortal and seeking his forgiveness. He was utterly confused and asked Jia to explain and asked them to get up as he will not go against them, to which she said that he was an immortal, and he reassured them that he was just a human like them. Tears welled up in her eyes when Kerr asked her to calm down and explain the situation. He also asked the uncles to get up. Jia started explaining that there is a sect known as the Tian Wu sect to the east side of the Panshan village. Every other month the village must offer them food and drinks, even beasts' corpses. But if nothing is offered, Tianwu sect would capture the strong men from the village, and they are never seen again. Kei, now full of rage, understood that the Tianwu sect was pressuring normal citizens, bullying the weak. A man came running towards them asking if they were fine, to which Jia said that the prince had saved them. The man asked them to evacuate, as the immortals were there to cause him trouble. The village had received a wanted poster with his face on it. He was stunned to know how those people found out that he was there. The man asked Jia to take him underground, which he refused as he was supposed to save them. She explained to him that he might die if those people found him. It was Panshan village's duty to save him as he had saved them multiple times. The master and his fellows came flying on their swords to investigate the whole Panshan village about the man in the poster. Every villager refused to see him. The master was infuriated as he knew that had hidden Kei somewhere. He summoned his sword in wrath and attacked the chief of the village, his body instantly covered in blood. He then summoned more swords to kill everyone in the village. Xia and Kuei heard the wailing and crying and got terrified by the voices. Kei stood up to take immediate actions, but Xia tried to stop him. He did not listen to her and ran outside, seeing everyone getting attacked. He came right in front of the villagers, protecting them like a shield, and asked everyone to lower their heads. He got brutally injured at his back. The villagers screamed in terror, and one of their fellows told their master that it was the same young man they were looking for. The system rewarded Kei 50 bluff points for showing off. He immediately asked everyone to go inside in a safe place and stop sacrificing their lives for him. The master mockingly said that this coward had come out by himself. If he had come earlier, the villagers would have not died. Kei exclaimed that he enjoyed showing off in the past, but it went all vain. But today he realized the importance of showing off. One of the fellows asked their master's permission to fight him. The master asked him to keep him alive as they wanted to investigate him about the ancient saint technique. Kei proclaimed that he was not a saint, but still he never bullied or even killed innocent souls. He tapped on the system. The interface notified him of receiving 530 upgrade tokens. By successfully recycling and soaring, Dragon 9 changes was upgraded successfully. He had gained its peak. The fellow came to attack him, and he was adamant to kill him. He jumped off the ground and kicked his stomach very hard. The other fellows were completely dazed. The system congratulated him for killing a foundation establishing stage cultivator and rewarded him with 8,000 experience points. The other fellows attacked him, claiming that he could never fight off a core stage cultivator. Kei accepted the challenge and activated the Soaring Dragon 9 changes, the 9th stage. The fellows went blind as there were red lights all around, and with just one punch he killed 2 core stage cultivators, gaining him 2,000 experience points. The master was appalled that he could not be at the foundation establishing stage if he was able to kill strong stage cultivators in a flash. The master ordered the remaining fellows to follow him to report all this to the elders. Kei roared that he was not letting anyone leave alive from here today. The system rewarded him with 10 bluffing points, exchanged for 3,000 lightning movements. The current progress reached up to 100%, 100 points of skill essence were consumed, 3,000 volt lightning was upgraded and reached its consummation. The system asked whether he would purchase the shadow meld for it. Kei thought it was not necessary at this point. The fellow asked him to surrender for stealing precious items from the celestial sect. He stood up and attacked him as well, and the system awarded him 10,000 experience points for killing a cultivator at the core-bearing stage. The master, seeing all the cultivators dead, got extremely scared and asked Kei to let him go alive, and he would not tell the celestial sect that he was here. As he was about to finish the sentence, Kei immediately appeared in front of him and penetrated his hand in his stomach that came out of his back with blood spurting out of it. He said that he could say these words to the villagers he just killed. The master's lifeless body fell on the ground. The system rewarded him 20,000 experience points for killing cultivator Wang Shan at the consummation of core bearing stage. It was raining heavily when he came back to the ground. Xia and the other villagers came running towards to him. He fell on his knees in front of the dead villager's body and prayed for their souls to rest in peace and blamed himself for their deaths. Xia reassured that the cultivators would still have gone on a killing spree even if it was not for him. Kei claimed that as long as he was there, he would protect Panshan village. He felt that it was like a mission to protect this village, as he did not have any home in this world, and this is also where Xia lived, so he felt it as a noble duty to safeguard this village. Sitting in the room, he opened his status on the system and analyzed it. He did not expect to earn over 100,000 experience points by killing the cultivators. He also gained 185 acting tough points, considering he actually made good fortune overnight. He could not purchase the intermediate part of the ancient 5 elemental arts hurriedly. Someone must know that he was in Panshan village. As the celestial sect had issued an arrest warrant, if more cultivators came to haunt him, he might not be able to protect the villagers this time. He decided to use the ancient spell, but soon realized that they were difficult to pronounce and also very expensive, so he decided to go for the beginner's spell. A yin-yang appeared, showcasing the great heavenly divergence spell, which was an incomplete spell that originated from an ancient divine spell. With the change of yin-yang, it could overcome hardness with softness. The spell could confuse the intruders and leave them in a dilemma. The spell was with integrated offensive and defense price that was 65 acting tough points. Another Four Directions Desolation spell originated from the ancient Four Directions Divine Animals Guarding Array. The covering area of the spell was large. The phantom images of the four divine animals, which were the azure dragon in the east, the white tiger in the west, the vermilion bird in the south, and black tortoise in the north, were guarding the spell. Taking in account the abilities of both the spells, he decided to purchase the Four Direction Desolation spells, as it was easier, and it would allow the phantom images of the divine animals to guard the spell and kill all the intruders that were very violent and cruel. He was awarded with 80 acting tough points for successfully purchasing it. He felt powerful because he needed to be violent and cruel for those cultivators. The system notified him about the method of use after setting up 4 spell cores, pouring beast blood as sacrifice to activate the spell. He wondered if he could find the beast's blood in this village. Luckily, he still had some acting tough points left. He purchased the immediate part of the ancient 5 elemental arts. The surroundings crackled, and the system notified him that he had been upgraded for 10 levels continuously. The current cultivation stage was level 1 of the core bearing stage. He felt like it was cheating when Jia came and informed him about the numerous cultivators that had reached the mountains and were heading towards the village. He became happy as he desperately needed more experience points for upgrade. He asked Jia to gather all the villagers as he needed help from all of them. She told him that she heard from Brother Zhuang that a powerful cultivator also appeared on the mountains who could raise it with just one hand. If they went after them, they could punish them. She also suggested running away from the village and hiding somewhere else. As Jia had lost her parents in her childhood and Pan Shan village was her only home, he considered her very reluctant for taking such a bold step. He patted her head and reassured her that he would save the village and the villagers, no matter how powerful the cultivators were. The villagers gathered as per his instructions, and they were worried about the cultivators when Care asked them to get the blood of snake, tiger, bird and tortoise and make sure to not mix them. The villagers got worried as the blood of the tiger was difficult to collect due to their ferocity, so he asked them to get the blood of the remaining animals and he would arrange the tiger's blood. He asked Jia to stay back and not worry. He then fled into the air raising 4 flags, east, west, north and south. Everything was ready except for the blood, and he knew he had to buy time for the villagers to collect blood. The cultivators gathered, and their master ordered his apprentices to find the man who was on the arrest warrant and kill every villager who tried to come in their way. They saw a suspicious object on top of the mountain and realized it was Kue and asked him to surrender at once. He teased by asking them to surrender instead and also called them cowards. The apprentices' full rage came forward to attack him when the master stopped them by analyzing that the man's cultivation stage had reached the core bearing stage. The apprentices were shocked as the warrant said that the man's cultivation was just at the qi refining stage and only a few days had passed. That is when they realized that the cultivators had disappeared. That meant that he must have killed them, and now he was about to repeat his trick and lured them down as well. The master ordered them to wait on the mountain opposite him. They praised Elder Liu for having a sharp eye, otherwise he would have lured them down. The system awarded Key 5 acting tough points, and he thought how easy it was to fool them. He announced that his master had said whoever tried to come near the village would face wrath, as their fellow past members had already lost their life to him. The cultivators were dumbfounded and wondered who his master could be. He announced that if they annoyed his master he would kill them and also empty their vault. The cultivators were offended and wanted to attack when one of them stopped them by saying that it was his annoying way to lure them. The system then notified him that he had gained 20 acting tough points. He kept annoying them by saying he could fight them with just one hand. Meanwhile, the villagers collected the blood separately and gathered together, but still they were worried that how could he save them by using blood. He heard the noises and knew that the villagers must have brought the blood. He then snapped by saying to the cultivators that as they do not want to fight, it would be better he go and take a nap and flee in the air. The cultivators were flabbergasted as to who could possibly be his master, that he is so easily traveling through lightning. The master then remembered a big shot that existed in the cultivators' world about 10 years ago, whose name was Duan. By his skills of stealing the vault and killing the cultivators, and his cultivation stage was upgraded to such a high level, he said that it is highly possible that this man is his apprentice. While they were engrossed in thoughts and also considered asking for reinforcements from the celestial sect, Kue attacked a tiger and extracted his blood, thinking how easy it was to fool those cultivators. He quickly rushed back to the village to activate the spell. The villagers told him that they had finished collecting the blood. He activated the spell through the system and fled in air. There were splashes and lightning, and water rose up to the mountains. The cultivators instantly knew that someone was performing a spell. Kei reassured the villagers that no one from the celestial sect would ever enter into their village, and now he was going to get rid of the cultivators. Jia tried to stop him, but he said that this spell will protect them, and she does not need to worry about his life, as he was at peace that they all were protected now. The cultivators on the mountain were now fuming with rage, that if he had a master, why would he need a spell to protect the village? It made them realize how the young man so easily fooled them all, by making them believe in an imaginary powerhouse. Just when they were about to break the spell, Kei appeared, and kicked one of the apprentices' face, and a fight broke out. They blamed him for backstabbing them, and he replied swiftly that he played them fair and square, and how fool were they to think that there was a powerhouse. But it was true, as he considered himself powerhouse. The master said that he was naive to believe that he could stop them with a spell, to which he replied that he planned to kill them with it. They erupted into laughter. It made Kei confused whether the spell was really weak, but he paid 80 active tough points for it. The master claimed that he could break the spell like a piece of cake. With swift hand movements he attacked the spell, but all in vain as it persisted. Kei laughed at his tactic and said that he was the powerhouse and it always stays lonely. They challenged him to come out of the spell and fight them. He launched the yin-yang, out of which came out a blazing vermilion. The apprentices were adamant that it was just an illusion, so Elder Liu stood in front of it and asked him to attack, as he could not fool them this time. Kuei was confused, but let the vermilion attack them, and within a blink of an eye the vermilion launched at them, and all of them started burning. Kei informed that he was not finished yet, and he launched the azure dragon. The cultivators tried to escape, but in vain. One by one they were being killed, and the system awarded him points for each kill. The elder decided to flee with the remaining cultivators when Kuei appeared in front and asked to remain steadfast as they had said before. The master then proceeded to attack him. That's when he realized that the elder was indeed very powerful, and he could not underestimate his strength. He then ordered the cultivators to attack the village, as the 4 divine beasts had been used, and Kei was also present there, so that meant that the village was unguarded, and they could easily attack the villagers. An idea popped in Kei's mind to let them attack the spell. He challenged them to fight at least 300 rounds, but they tried breaking the spell, which in return ended in a splash and killed all of them. Although the spell was protected by 4 divine beasts, the essence of the spell was 8 desolations. The intruder's cultivation and magic arts were confined by the spell. They had to walk in 8 kinds of desolate land with their mortal bodies. The system awarded him 150,000 points, and Golden Core for killing 3 cultivators at the Golden Core stage, and 100,000 points, and Golden Core for killing a cultivator at the consummation of the Golden Core stage. The villagers were discussing the Phoenix and Azure Dragon when they saw Kuei returning. They asked whether he had defeated the cultivators, to which he showed a victory sign, and the villagers cheered in joy. Xia also thanked him personally. Peacefully lying in the room, he saw his status on the system. He thought how profitable it was that he gained that many points, and also got upgraded from level 1 to level 5. He also remembered about the Golden Core that he received by killing the Elder. The lifelong cultivation and skills of the cultivator are converged in the Golden Core. If the host ate the Golden Core, he would have a 30% chance of acquiring the magic skills of the Golden Core's former owner, and also had a chance of 30% to be devoured by the inner demon. If a Golden Core is sold to the system, he would obtain 50,000 experience points. He decided to save it. From the combat he realized that his fists are too small to fight his enemies, and wished that he had a set of glittering armor and weapons instead to help him fight against them. He checked the Skyrank skills, and several options came up, and he thought of getting them all. He was confused by the abilities and prices of the weapons, so he let it slide for a while. The system reminded him of getting 1 secret art randomly out of 9 that he thought could possibly get the one that might be suitable for acting. He instantly purchased the 9 secrets and received a secret art weapon, which he immediately acquired. He announced to the system to purchase a flame-devouring wave and 6 corporeal forms. Now that he had acquired the 2 magic arts and their weapons, he was ready when suddenly the system notified him about obtaining the dark, heavy-busted sword, and also a hidden bonus was activated. He stood there confused. It was Yan's black robe that used to be worn by Emperor Yan when he was young. It could conceal his appearance. The cultivators could not detect his cultivation stage, and would also pose pressure to the enemy wherever he went. He instantly smirked, and thought that he could put on all the items and hang at the gate of the sects in order to earn some acting points. He decided to put them away for the time being in order to not scare the villagers. Because of the protection of the spell, the village was now safe, and with lands, rivers, goats and chickens on the mountains, the villagers could be self-sufficient and did not need to go anywhere out of the village in future. He saw two men going towards the mountains to buy seeds. He stopped them because if they left, they would be endangered by the people of the celestial sect. He offered them to buy anything they wanted from the small town across the mountains. The villagers were embarrassed but agreed. He also said to them to ask everyone if someone needed something from the small town, he would buy it for them. Jia came rushing and asked him to get her some good fabrics, as the clothes he was wearing did not fit him, so she wanted to make new clothing for him. He agreed and she shyly left. He thought that he had been in this world for so long, yet he still did not go anywhere else. He got quite excited to see the small town now. He wore the robe and reached Li Shui town, where he spotted Ru along with some cultivators. One of them felt a powerful aura from him that he mentioned to Ru that his clothing is weird, yet his cultivation stage is very high. The system awarded him 10 acting tough points, and he thought he should spend more time in this town in this robe to gain more acting points. Ru asked the cultivators if they heard about the latest news that people of Luoyang sect visited the celestial sect and suffered serious ties because the wanted man is apparently an apprentice of a big shot. Kay was alarmed at their conversation that he had a background and did not know about it. They discussed the big shot, and one of them said that it was Jude. It was said that he was quite famous in the East Continent, even though their sect leader was afraid of him. Ru turned around, startled to know that he was an apprentice of Jude. Kay wondered who that person could be. At the celestial sect, the cultivators were discussing Jude, who was involved in the issue of Panshan village and was famous for his weird temperament and had a really bad reputation. If anyone hurt his apprentice, he would face wrath. After the issuance of the warrant, the Yang sect had been working hard to hunt the man down, but he seemed very ferocious and ruthless, and it also cost them the lives of many apprentices of their own, and even several elders at the Golden Core stage. Zhang, sect leader of the celestial sect, stood there, and he ordered them to summon the man to come to the celestial sect tomorrow and apologize to you all. The elder son got angry, as they deserved more than an apology. He asked him why he was opposing his decision, to which he replied that first he harassed Ru, and now he claimed that he is an apprentice of Jude. This clearly proves that he is a fraud and must be killed immediately. Another elder interrupted that it's Jude's hobby to do evil things, hence it's quite possible for his apprentice to have the same hobbies. Elder son roared again that he had killed so many of their apprentices and started arguing. The leader shut them both and said that they will tomorrow, whether he is actually Jude's apprentice or not. Q's acting points reached 130 from 25 during the shopping trip, which he was really happy about. When he was returned to the mountain, he saw the people of the celestial sect gathered over there. He was shocked, and one of them asked him politely to stop and clear out the misunderstandings. Kay instantly knew that they thought he was Jude's apprentice, hence they were scared of him. He politely conveyed the message of their leader to meet him at the celestial sect tomorrow to have a detailed discussion and eliminate all the misunderstandings. He also offered him to guide the way towards the celestial sect, to which he replied that he knew the way, especially to their treasure room. He brought all the goods to Jia and asked her to distribute them to the villagers. She was pleased to see such nice fabrics that she blurted out that he would look more handsome in the clothes she would make for him from these fabrics. She suddenly realized what she had said and tried to correct herself, but Kay softly patted her head and called her silly girl. He then informed her that the leader of their celestial sect had called him so they could talk, so he would be gone for some time. He would resolve the conflicts and stop them from harassing their village. Jia was terrified and stopped him from going there. He smiled softly and reassured her that he would be fine, and he can easily handle the celestial sect. He wanted to try the new clothes she will make for him when he will be back. The next day he entered the celestial sect with pride and said he heard they were looking for him. The cultivators, fuming with rage, glanced at him. Zhang, the leader of the celestial sect, introduced himself and said that he had summoned him to resolve the conflicts between them. Elder son roared that first of all he had stolen from their treasure room. Kay immediately interrupted him and said that he had no idea about any treasure and they must not blame him for losing their goods. Both the elders bellowed at him and said that he had killed so many apprentices and elders of their sect. He interrupted them again that they could not blame him as they did not have any eyewitnesses. A cultivator with a swollen cheek and closed eye claimed that he saw everything. He was very cunning and caused so much damage to their sect. Quay was surprised to know that there were survivors. He immediately said even if the people were killed by him, it was still justifiable defense. The leader said that they could not continue the negotiation if he kept his attitude that way, to which he snapped and walked towards the door, saying that he would ask his master to negotiate with them personally. They were all puzzled by the mention of the master, when an elder who had come to summon him stopped him politely and said that he misunderstood their leader. The system awarded him 30 acting tough points. He said that he was confused because he was called here to resolve the conflicts, but they were all talking illogical. The leader thought he really seemed Jude's apprentice. He then asked to apologize to them, and they will resolve everything, otherwise their sect had a lot of magic artifacts which could be used to break any spell, and the people of Panshan village could be in danger again. Kay asked whether he was threatening him. The leader said that I gave you 2 consequences, now it was up to him to choose one. He refused to apologize and said that his master would banish him if he did so. How about he treated them to dinner? The sect uproared and the feast was served. Elder Sun stood at a balcony and asked an apprentice, Lian, to take his ID and bring him the spell-breaking cartridge from the treasure room. The boy had easily fooled Zhang, so now it was his responsibility to take everything into his own hands. Kay asked the cultivators to enjoy more drinks and thought how shameless they were. Even after considering him Jude's apprentice, they kept fawning on him and even gifted him several precious items and magic artifacts. It also gained him many action tough points. At least the village was safe now, he thought as he left from the door. The leader approached him from behind and told him that he used to meet his master several hundred years ago, and he wondered how he must be doing now. Kay replied that he was fine now after enjoying himself in the East Continent. The leader asked him whether he was in the Fire Nation now. Kay said that he did not know about his whereabouts, but he gave him a secret spell by which he would show up immediately if he was ever in danger. He asked the leader if he wanted to try to meet him, but he refused, saying that they would meet only if it was written in fate. He also offered him to stay in the Celestial Sect in future, and take anything from there if he wanted, and also reassured him that no one will trouble the villagers again. Kay contemplated that the leader was really afraid of Jude. Last time he had just looked through their treasure room. This time he could make a good fortune from it, he thought cunningly. He said that he really appreciated his kindness, but it was time to go back to pack his belongings first. He then fled in the air, and reassured Jia in his thoughts that no one would harass the villagers from now on. He then felt a sudden pang in his chest. His chest tightened, and he wondered if they had poisoned him during dinner. The cultivators were running towards the sect, as the master had ordered them to reach there because something had happened. But they stopped midway when they saw fire erupting from the village. It was burning. They immediately reached there to see what was happening, and saw dead bodies of the villagers on the ground, and wondered who dared to slaughter them. That is when they saw a man from the Fallen Spirit sect attacking one of the villagers with a sword. He turned towards them, and exclaimed that their clothing looked like the Celestial sects. The apprentice, Ru, raised her sword towards him. How dare he be so rude after knowing their identities? More men came forward to attack them. Kuei reached there and saw the village in flames. He was flabbergasted and called out Jia. A man came flying to attack him, claiming that he had found a survivor. Shui immediately killed him and looked around the village. He found dead bodies of all the villagers there. That is when he heard someone calling him Brother Kuei. It was Jia, who was delighted to see him and came running towards him. But before she could reach, someone attacked her, and blood spurted out from the medial region of her body. Kay at once killed the man who attacked Jia. He carefully picked up her body and cried in horror. He ordered the system to immediately recover her. The system denied, as the level was a bit high enough to cure a person who was not the host. He then cried that he would purchase all the medicines that could heal her wounds. The system denied again, as the level was not high enough, and the medicines could only be used by the host. He cursed in disappointment, and Jia softly placed her hand on his cheek. Tears were running down his face, and she assured her that it was okay. She was happy that she could at least see him before her death. There were already many regrets for her. She also confessed that she really liked Brother Kay, and was not able to finish making new clothing for him. The happiest days for her were the ones she spent with him. The memories of Jia flooded Koe's mind, and he helplessly called out her name as she took her final breath. He hugged her lifeless body and said sorry. The apprentices were fighting the men when they heard some voices, and realized that it was the mysterious man they had met earlier in Shui Town. Kay asked the system if it could revive Jia, but it declined, saying that the system was not upgraded, and it was not possible to do so. It then suggested him to purchase a soul palorda, which could be used to protect the soul of the dead. He then asked if he upgraded the system, would he be able to find a method to raise the dead. The system notified him that after he reaches the consummation of the Golden Core stage, he would be able to upgrade the system. As it was the first time he was upgrading it, it would be free of charge. He then let the enemies who slaughtered the village become his experience points. He successfully purchased the soul palorda. 100 acting tough points were consumed. It collected Zia's soul, and it was mentioned that one soul palorda could only store one soul. The dead would be respected. The system asked him to bury her body, and when he finds a way to raise the dead, he would be able to reshape the body of the dead. Apprentice Ru appeared, and was surprised to see that he was the same person whom she considered a bad person, and also saw at the Shui Town. How could he become so powerful? Kay called the apprentices, and asked them politely if they knew who intruded the Panshan village. Ru thought not to help him, as he was wanted by the Celestial Sect, but the words blurted out from her mouth, and she told them that they were the Fallen Spirit Sect, towards the west. Without wasting any time, Qi fled to the west and reached the Fallen Spirit Sect, where he killed all the apprentices he could see at first glance. The sect leader came forward and asked him how dare he kill his apprentices outside the gate of the Fallen Spirit Sect, and asked him to stop right away. With rage in his eyes, Qi said that he would only stop when he ruined their sect. More apprentices approached to attack him, and claimed that they would still kill him, even though he was the apprentice of Jude. He started fighting them when he heard an explosion. The leader had summoned a black flame dragon. It roared and came towards him angrily. System notified him that he had consumed 100 skill essence points. The cultivation of flame devouring had reached 100%. The apprentices were burning when the leader approached and warned him that he would give him a play of this art by burning his soul energy. Even Jude could not save him. Qi used his secret art of weapon, and all skill essence were consumed, moving the progress to 10%. Kay halted the attack made by the leader, and he was left dumbfounded. He knew how powerful Kay was when he ordered the attacking red swords to turn towards him. He cried in horror to stop the attack, and confessed that the Fallen Spirit Sect performed the massacre in the Panshan village under the order of the elder son of the Celestial Sect. Key's eyes widened with horror and disappointment. He cried in despair to stop him, as he had nothing to do with him or the village, but it was Elder Sun who instigated this massacre. She broke the spell in the village with the spell-breaking cartridge and promised to give him a bottle of vitality pills if he could kill all the villagers. Kay was infuriated as Leader Jiang had promised that no one would be harmed, but it turned out to be Elder Sun who was the mastermind behind all this. The cultivator then asked him to hold her accountable and spare his life. Kay did not listen, and let the attacking red swords pierce through his body and especially his eye. The system awarded him 200,000 experience points, a storage ring, and a big mystery gift bag for killing the cultivator at infant stage. He then proceeded to kill all the other apprentices. He then knew how Leader Jiang and other cultivators were at an infant stage, and he needed more power to fight them. He asked the system to open the mystery bag. He obtained 2 beginner's divine escape spells, a disguise puppet, and the bone-freezing fire. The bone-freezing fire was the famous mystical fire in the fight's break sphere, and was also very expensive. He also purchased the Buddha's fiery lotus, and the molten green lotus, which ranked the 19th. It gained him 430 acting tough points. He then gathered the silk clothing he bought from the town, and picked up the dead bodies and made shrouds of the cultivators he had just killed. He was adamant to revive Jia soon. He then came back to the village, and saw all the graves of the villagers, and stood up to attack the Celestial Sect. He reached there and called out furiously the leader and the apprentices to come out and let the shrouded bodies of the dead apprentices fall from the sky. Everyone was shocked, and he called out again, otherwise he would trample the whole sect. The leader got to know what Elder Sun did, and said that he had guaranteed the safety of the village. Then why did he kill them? Elder Sun replied that he considered them just bugs, and it was not such a big deal. How could he just come here and take revenge? He said that the Panshan village was really important to him. Kay was still screaming for them to come out, otherwise he would trample the whole sect. The leader got infuriated, and then a cultivator entered, informing them that Kuei had killed several seniors of the elite hall. Elder Sun got up in full rage to kill him off. Leader Jiang stopped him and blamed him for the mess. He also reminded him that Q was the apprentice of Jude, and with a special spell he could come here, and they cannot afford to offend him, as it would ruin the entire Fire Nation. They went running outside and found the dead bodies of the apprentices, and the leader of the Fallen Spirit Sect on the ground. They were flabbergasted by the scene and asked if he had killed them all. He said that when he kills Elder Sun, then they will get to know who killed all of them. The apprentices called him a bloodthirsty monster, and asked the leader to cut off his head. Ke then screamed, asking did they know who ordered the Fallen Spirit Sect to slaughter the Panshan village. It was none other than the conscienceless Elder Sun, he announced. The leader Jiang tried to calm him down, and Elder Sun offered him his bottle of vitality pills to make amends to the death of the villagers. She also offered him to go to the treasury room of the inner sect and choose several magic artifacts. Kay held the bottle of vitality pills and threw it on the ground furiously, resulting in it breaking into pieces. The Elder Sun screamed with horror to see his bottle of vitality get broken in pieces. He claimed that even if he was given a celestial sect, he would still not make amends to his loss. The leader asked what he wanted then. He took out his sword and ran towards their direction. He wanted life for life, blood for blood. That was the death of the old woman, Elder Sun. Everyone was shocked as to how he could claim life to life for such ordinary people, and being at the core bearing stage, how could he be so confident in front of Leader Jiang and Elder Sun? He made up his mind to give him a full play if the Soaring Dragon's 9 transformation. First, he would wound the Elder Sun, and then incinerate her with the bone-freezing fire. He raised his hand to do all this, but before anything could happen, he was attacked with a blazing bang that landed him on the ground. Between the core-bearing stage and the infant transformation stage, there were two stages, which were the golden core stage and the original infant stage. The gap was too large to be filled with magic arts. The leader Zhang then asked him politely that he hoped he could stop on a high note. Kay said that he would only stop when he killed the old woman. He activated the automatic recovery function. Elder Sun then cried how he could offend the celestial sect for the lives of dozens of ordinary people. He said that for him their lives were equally precious, but the Elder Sun turned out to be worse than a beast, and he will accept the lose-lose situation. Everyone was left dazed by his comments. The system awarded him 120 acting tough points. The leader then said that he should not harm the celestial sect, as he was sparing his life just for the sake of his master. Qi took up the challenge and summoned the bone-freezing power. Elder Sun and the other cultivators were flabbergasted, as they had never seen such a powerful flame. He then brought the molten green lotus. The leader wondered from where he could have found such fancy items, as it was colder than the Millennium Dark Ice. Kay then combined the flames with completely contradictory attributes that would result in collision between the ice and fire. The cultivators were dumbfounded at his action, and leader Zhang ordered him to stop. He then asked the Buddha's fiery lotus to explode, and said to the Elder Sun that he would commemorate dozens of villagers of the Panshan village with her life as the sacrifice. There was blazing fire and lightning with thunderous noises. The whole celestial sect was destroyed in a blink of an eye. The dead bodies of the cultivators remained on the ground. The whole place erupted in blazing fire. Q stood at the top looking at the damage he made. The system awarded him several tough points, and for upgrading 4 levels continuously, he reached level 1 of the golden core stage. Kuei looked up at the sky and called out the villagers, asking them, did they see how he killed that barbaric woman who plotted their slaughter? He called out Jia and told her how nicely he had avenged them. It seemed like the villagers and Jia were looking down at him and beaming with pride and gratitude. Tears rolled down his face. He then saw leader Zhang running towards him to kill him. He said that he should have known the consequences, and he knows that he was just friendly with him because he was afraid of his master. He also exclaimed that whenever he saw Zhang next time, he would definitely kill him too. With that, he disappeared into thin air, using his divine travel talisman. With the buildings destroyed, several elders killed, and many apprentices wounded, leader Zhang went crazy as Kuei disappeared right in front of his eyes. He had already fled to a place several hundred kilometers away. Half a month later, in a mountainous region, 2 girls were seen fighting a python. One of them was trying to protect the other, saying that her junior sister's apprentice was just collecting medical herbs. How dare he threaten her to death? The python was adamant to eat his prey, claiming that the girl was very tender and tasted good. With that, she immediately attacked the python with her sword, cutting its body into several pieces. They then heard a few cultivators coming in their direction, and their leader thanked her for killing the blood python for their blood sea sect. He then asked them to surrender their magic artifacts and spirit stones and roll away. The girls were confused, but decided to give their belongings to them and leave the place. As they were leaving, the leader told them to roll away, and not walk away in a sinister manner. The girls asked the Lord Song not to humiliate them, as they did not have the right to do so, even when their great change sect had declined. He said that he was in a good mood today, but if they did not roll away from there, they would definitely be killed. The girls were disgusted when someone called out that they were being mugged. Everyone turned around in the direction of the voice where Kei was standing, adorned in a black hanfu, long hair left open, with his sword in one hand and his body leaning on a tree. The girl was shocked at his confidence that a young cultivator at level 3 of the Golden Core stage was going to rob a group of cultivators at level 7, 8 at the Golden Core stage. She wondered how reckless this man could be. One of the cultivators asked him to be professional, even if he was trying to be a mugger. He claimed that this withered bones forest had always been the place for their blood sea sect to rob others. No one ever dared to rob them. Kay then displayed a few swords, leaving them shocked, as they were the swords of the blood sea sect. That meant he must also have storage rings in his possession. The leader claimed that they had many apprentices in their blood sea sect, and deaths of few of them could change nothing, but how dare he step at their doorstep. He immediately asked his apprentices to kill him and feed the dogs with his meat. Complying to the orders, they all went running towards him. He swished his swords towards them and killed all of them in just one move. Their leader stood there stunned and angrily asked who he was. He then said with a proud smirk that I am who I am. He introduced himself as Yan of the Exploding Heavens faction, and his nickname was Dugu Chubai, an invincible swordsman. Lord Song asked him why he found fault with their Blood Seas sect, to which he said that he had nothing against them, and was quite normal to cause casualties as he was just robbing them. He felt humiliated. The girls were impressed by his bravery. One of the girls noticed that his cultivation stage suddenly upgraded to level 5 from 3 of the golden core stage. He must have used some magic arts which could conceal his cultivation stage, maybe because he did not want others to know his identity. It made her wonder if he was the senior at the original infant stage, who only targets on Blood Sea's sects. She hoped he could save them. She then moved forward and asked him to leave and also called him senior. He replied that he would not leave as the Blood Sea sect was nothing to be afraid of. The girls were left frozen as they thought they were being saved by a senior, but he turned out to be a complete lunatic. The Lord Song said that ever since the Blood Sea sect was established, no one had ever dared to humiliate them like this. If this came into account of the sect leader, he would not spare his life and also not offer him a burial place. Kay laid back and gave him an opportunity to call for reinforcement and have a good fight. He thought by killing a few apprentices he was upgraded to 2 levels, which was far more efficient than killing beasts in this forest. Lord Sun exclaimed that he was ready to fight, as he was the son of the leader of the Blood Sea sect and future leader of the Blood Sea sect. He then turned around. One of the fallen apprentices coughed, and Quer called him out mockingly, saying that one of his underlings was still breathing. Lord Song turned around, fuming with anger. He asked what he was going to do, to which Quer replied that he was going to kill the future sect leader to make the fight more interesting. At this point, the girls were adamant that the man was completely insane. She asked him to calm down, otherwise the Blood Sea sect would definitely hunt him down, to which Lord Song exclaimed that all demonic sects of the entire Windfog City would also hunt him down. Kay said that it was very exciting for him, that he swished his sword and killed him in an instant. Everyone gasped in horror. Kay then helped the fallen apprentice to get up and ask him not to grieve. He then let him go to call the leader of the sect. The girl tried to stop him, as he did not know what the consequences could be, to which Kay investigated if the cultivators of the Blood Sea sect were at the infant transformation stage. As long as they were not on that stage, they were good to go. He then said that they needed to make some preparations before their arrival, so he asked them to collect firewood. The girls went into the forest and discussed that it seemed that the senior had some plan, and a brave man like him with a plan would never risk his life. The girls brought back the firewood and asked the senior if he was going to set up a spell. He laughed as to why he would set up a spell. He was going to make the New Orleans chicken wings. How could they fight with empty stomachs? The girls were flabbergasted as the enemies were just coming, and he was worried about his hunger, and was also in a mood of making grilled chicken wings. He said he needed to be fun in order to gain strength to fight his enemies. With a few moves, he showed off his culinary skills and gained points for acting tough from the system. He offered the girls the wings. They were hesitant at first, but eventually tried it. Just one bite was enough to make her appreciate his culinary skills, as the chicken was cooked to perfection in terms of taste, texture, and smell. He said that he was flattered and in future he could gain more points by showing off his cooking skills. At the same time, deep in the Withered Bones forest, a man woke up from deep slumber. He was surrounded by 2 tigers. He said that something smelt really amazing, and he had not eaten anything for several hundred years. But having an appetite today seemed unusual. The tigers got scared, to which he said that he would never eat their raw, tough meat. The man then asked the tiger about the issue he had asked to investigate, who was the bold man pretending to be the apprentice of Jude. They explained that a man named Quay appeared in the Celestial sect half a month ago and declared himself to be Jude's apprentice. He had troubles with the sect and even killed the elder son in front of their sect leader. He even ruined almost the entire Celestial sect, which had become a laughingstock for their time-honored foundation that was destroyed all at once. The leader of the Celestial sect is still in search of him, but has not been able to locate him yet. It was quite weird that the man escaped safely at last. The man was surprised at the leader who could not fight a kid and asked the tigers to inquire properly about this matter. As the smell was getting stronger, he decided to take a walk outside. Kay, along with the girls, was enjoying his meal when this old man came out of nowhere and said how unkind he was to not offer him chicken wings. 3 of them were surprised as no one knew him, and he devoured the chicken wings shamelessly. He appreciated Kay for his cooking skills, and in return he called him an old beggar for eating so readily. He said that he was not an old beggar, but mighty, majestic, and dignified. But he said that he had good judgment. If he claimed to be number 2 in the world, no one would dare to say that they were number 1. Kay then boasted off, saying that he was called the Lord of Cookery. The old man was offended, as how could a young man call himself Lord of Cookery when he has eaten the guts of a dragon and a phoenix? His chicken wings were nothing compared to them. He then mocked that the guts of dragon and phoenix were nothing, as he used to feast on the legendary KFC, McDonald's, and Pizza Hut. The old man was offended as he had never heard about them and asked him to stop making up names. They both started showing off more, and an illogical argument broke off. Both of the girls stood there confused and puzzled about what was going on. They called each other names, and then eventually stopped as the old man said he did not want to argue with an ignorant kid, as he used to travel a lot freely in the seas in the northern underworld, along with rocks, and enjoyed the delicacies from the times he was not even born. Kay then claimed that he had even eaten rocks. The old man then mocked him that at such a cultivation stage he would have never stepped out of the Fire Nation. How dare he say that he had eaten rocks when he was adamant that he had never even seen one? He then pointed towards the ladies, asking whether they had heard about rocks, and they declined. Kay then said that he had not only eaten, but also composed a poem on rocks. The old man wished to listen to the poem, and he said there is a kind of fish in the northern underworld whose name is rockfish. The old man was surprised how he knew that rocks used to be fish. Could it be possible that he had really seen them? Kay continued saying that rockfish is large and cannot be stewed in a pot. When it evolved into a bird, it was named rockbird. The rockbird is also gigantic and requires 2 grills. One grill is sweet, the other is mildly spicy. Then we could drink a bottle of snow beer before starting our adventure. The girls burst out into laughter, saying how could it be called a poem? Only the few lines in the middle and beginnings were okay. Rest were just related to foods. But the old man seemed impressed as he side-hugged Kay and appreciated his poem that one grill is sweet and the other is mildly spicy. Kay was flattered. The old man asked him what a snow beer was and how it helped him start his adventure. He said that he would definitely invite him next time he brews the beer. The old man was ecstatic and accepted the offer, and also presented him with a small gadget as a welcome gift. It was a black jade as a gift. Kay thought that it looked quite good, and accepted it, saying thank you. He fixed it on his belt, and the old man smiled. The girls were surprised to see them reconcile as they laughed and smiled. The environment changed into a killing aura as the people of the Blood Sea sect were approaching. Kay said that he had been waiting for them for so long. Finally they showed up. The old man said that he could help him fight his enemies if he was willing to beg for his aid. He said that he would never beg him for his help, but was also astonished that he was unable to see his cultivation stage. The old man pitied him that he was just at the golden core stage, and he would not inform him that 8 cultivators at the original infant stage were coming. The people who appeared were not from the Blood Sea sect, they were from the Great Change sect. The cultivators were at level 2 of the original infant stage. They were the sect leader, Elder Mo and Elder Lee, whom the girls greeted. Kay was mesmerized by the beauty of their leader, and wondered how such a young and pretty woman could be the leader of the sect, or she might be an old woman capable of retaining her youthful looks. The sect leader said that they heard about the killing of the future sect leader of the Blood Sea sect, and the girls were somehow involved in it, so they came immediately to see what had happened. The girl narrated the whole story, and the leader was astonished to know that the man not only killed Lord Song to lure all the members of the sect there, but also asked them to gather firewood and roasted chicken wings on the spot. The system awarded him several acting tough points when loud thumping was heard. Someone approached with fury, asking who had killed his son. The cultivators of the Great Change sect decided to help Kay as he had saved their apprentices from them. The old man knew that Quay would not be able to fight him due to his level, so he offered to beg him again in order to help him fight them. Kay was adamant not to beg anyone and said he would fight on his own. They kept on arguing, and Kay gained more tough points, and the Blood Sea sect's leader asked them to shut up and attacked Kay and the old man in a blink of an eye. Both of them raised their hands together to stop the attack, and the leader could not apprehend what had happened to him as he went back flying and hit the ground. There were crackles, and the leader was turned into an icy rock. The Great Change sect cultivators thought how powerful the old man was to kill the sect leader, but little did they know it was Kay who pulled up this move, and also gained experience points and a storage ring. The old man was shocked to see such a talent, but did not rectify that it was Kay who had killed the leader. The old man asked him about his move. He teased him in return to beg him so he could teach the move to him. The old man said that he was capable of protecting himself, so he better leave as he had someone to capture first. As Kay turned to leave, the cultivators of the Blood Sea sect rose to their feet, their hostility palpable. Their leader declared that no one could save him now, and the rest of the group agreed. Despite their threats, Kay remained unimpressed, his calm demeanor unfazed by their aggression. The cultivators, consumed by ambition, decided that whoever managed to kill Kay would become the new sect leader. Their arrogance didn't stop there. They plotted to eliminate the Great Change sect next, with their leader, a woman of extraordinary beauty, as their primary target. A senior member of the Blood Sea sect, outraged by the disrespectful remarks toward their leader, shouted for them to hold their tongues. Kay, however, responded with scorn, mocking them for their ignorance, saying they would remain single for the rest of their lives since they lacked even the most basic respect for women. His words only fueled their rage, and the cultivators charged at him in unison. Kay wasted no time. With a single flick of his hand, he activated the bone-freezing fire, and the battlefield fell silent. One by one, his enemies turned into statues of ice, their bodies frozen in place as lifeless rocks. The cultivators of the Great Change sect, watching from a distance, were struck speechless. They had heard of Kuei's power, but witnessing it firsthand left them in awe. One of them finally managed to ask who he was, and when Kuei revealed his identity, the name sent shivers through them all. Kuei's reputation as the man who single-handedly destroyed the Celestial sect was legendary. It was said he could decimate entire sects with ease, and now he stood before them. Leader Su, the Great Change sect's leader, paled at the revelation. Kuei noticed her unease and teased her about her sudden change in color, though she quickly dismissed his concern. Ignoring her protests, he began to boast about his abilities, proclaiming himself to be the divine doctor, and offering to examine her for any injuries. Skeptical of his claims, the apprentice reminded him that he had declared himself the Lord of Cookery. Kuei casually brushed off the comment, calling it a mere sideline, and insisted that medicine was his true calling. He then leaned closer, offering to examine her under the pretense of concern. Su, however, saw through his antics. The way he looked at her made her deeply uncomfortable, and she quickly rebuffed him. Frustrated and embarrassed, she disappeared into thin air, her face flushed with anger. The scene left the Great Change sect's elders and apprentices in stunned silence. A moment ago, Kuei had appeared to be a man of unmatched strength and dignity, but his shameless behavior left them questioning their first impressions. Still, they chose not to confront him, and instead extended an invitation for him to visit their sect as a guest. Kuei accepted the offer, considering it a good opportunity to explore and see something new. When they arrived at the Great Change sect, the elders began explaining the history of their once thriving sect. Many years ago, the Great Change sect had stood as an equal to the Celestial sect. Under the leadership of Leader Su's grandfather, the sect had flourished. However, after his passing and the tragic deaths of Leader Su's parents during a great battle, the sect had fallen into decline. Leader Su, burdened with responsibility at a young age, had taken charge and managed to reach the original infant stage within 20 years. Despite her impressive progress, the challenges were overwhelming. The elders spoke of the hardships they faced, and Kuei saw the truth of their words reflected in the sect's condition. The houses were shabby, the walls crumbling and weathered by time. The once beautiful courtyards were now overgrown and neglected, as though abandoned for years. Of the 20 apprentices who remained in the sect, only 2 had reached the Golden Core stage, the very same 2 cultivators Kuei had saved earlier. Kuei listened quietly and requested that they conceal his true identity, choosing instead to go by the name Yan. The elders agreed and led him to a resting place. As night fell, Kuei tried to relax but soon grew restless. Hunger gnawed at him, and he decided to hunt birds to roast for a midnight snack. Before he could leave, however, the scent of something aromatic drifted through the air. Intrigued, he approached the window and was surprised to see Leader Su standing outside in the moonlight. Curious about her presence at such a late hour, Kuei watched as she explained that cultivators who had reached advanced stages no longer needed sleep. Meditation alone was enough to restore their energy. She had not come to linger, but rather to speak with him. Leader Su asked about his future plans, and whether he would consider joining the Great Change sect. She offered him the position of Grand Elder, hoping he would find stability and purpose among them. Kuei, however, remained non-committal. He spoke of his desire to travel the world and revive Jia, but Leader Su persisted, suggesting that settling down would allow him to live peacefully. By joining the sect, he could teach the apprentices, giving him an opportunity to build something meaningful without resorting to the hatred and violence of his past. For a moment, Kuei remained silent, reflecting on her words as the stillness of the night settled around them. Kuei declined Su's offer, feeling that becoming part of the Great Change sect would rob him of the freedom he valued most, the ability to travel the world without restrictions or responsibilities. To him, settling down as a member of the sect seemed like a cage, no matter how noble the cause. Su, who had initially thought of him as a talented yet naive man, found herself surprised by the depth of his perspective. There was a maturity in his words that she hadn't expected, and for the first time, she saw him as someone with a clear vision for his life. She confessed that she envied his carefree nature and his ability to wander the world without any ties holding him back. Her life, on the other hand, was consumed by duty and responsibility, leaving no room for freedom. Kuei, as nonchalant as ever, suggested that she could also travel freely if she truly wanted to, even while remaining the sect leader. He even teased that he would be more than happy to begin an improvised journey with her if she dared to take that step. Although the idea made her smile faintly, Su explained the harsh reality of her role as the leader of the Great Change sect. The sect was constantly under attack by the demonic sect, a group of troublemakers who regularly appeared to demand spirit stones or cause havoc. Each time, Su and her people were forced to drive them away, but it was a constant struggle that left little time for anything else. Hearing about the battles, Kei's interest was immediately piqued. His eyes sparkled with excitement as he imagined the opportunity to fight and gain experience. For him, every challenge was a chance to grow stronger, and the idea of facing the demonic sect filled him with enthusiasm. Curious, he asked Sue about the strength of the attackers. She explained that the demonic sect often sent large groups of fighters, including 1 or 2 cultivators who had reached the original infant stage and several apprentices at the golden core stage. The combination of power and numbers was enough to overwhelm the Great Change sect, forcing them to comply with demands or risk greater damage. Kei, however, was completely unfazed. With his usual confidence, he brushed off her concerns and claimed there was nothing to worry about. He told Sue that if the sect prepared properly, they could simply wipe out the entire demonic sect the next time they attacked. Sue, though intrigued by his confidence, pointed out that such a feat could only be possible if Kei stayed at the sect to help them. For the first time, Kei began to seriously consider the idea. Perhaps staying, even temporarily, wouldn't be such a bad thing if it meant he could take part in battles that tested his strength and helped him grow. With this thought in mind, Kei turned to his system, his trusted source of solutions. He asked if there was anything he could provide to help the sect defend itself against future attacks. The system, always ready with an answer, suggested a Lord-powered cannon, a weapon of immense strength capable of launching attacks as powerful as those of a cultivator at the peak of the original infant stage. However, there was a catch. Each shot from the cannon would consume 1 spirit stone. The idea of such a weapon made Kei burst into laughter, the sound breaking the stillness of the night. Sue, standing nearby, looked at him in confusion, unable to understand what had suddenly amused him. When he finally calmed down, Kei turned to her with a look of triumph and told her he had found the perfect solution to all of their problems. With the Lord-powered cannon, not only would the Great Change sect be able to defend itself from the demonic sect's attacks, but it would also become the strongest sect in the entire region near Windfog City. For Sue, his confidence and unconventional methods were difficult to ignore, and though she didn't yet fully understand his plan, a spark of hope flickered within her. For the first time in years, the future of the Great Change sect didn't seem so bleak. Kei instructed the cultivators to gather dark iron, feeling fortunate that no rare or precious materials were required to build the cannon. With the gathered dark iron in hand, he quickly set to work, channeling his molten green lotus power. The mystical green fire surged from him, melting the dark iron rapidly while simultaneously purging it of all impurities. His precision was unmatched as he shaped the cannon with expert care, cooling and molding the metal seamlessly into the desired form. Once the base structure was complete, he efficiently assembled the necessary accessories, and before long, the cannon stood finished, imposing, gleaming, and a testament to his skill. Satisfied with his work, Kei instructed the cultivators to summon Leader Sue. When she arrived, he began explaining that, since the sect was located within a library protected by restrictive spells, any visitors required a written card of purpose to gain entry with a special order. With a dramatic flair, Kei produced a blank card and graciously offered to write the visiting card himself, claiming that only he was fit to prepare something so important. As he wrote, he couldn't help but boast about his appearance and accomplishments, throwing in unnecessary commentary about his charm and talent. He then urged Leader Sue to come and inspect the newly completed cannon. However, space on the visiting card was limited, leaving Kei slightly disappointed. After much thought, he decided to keep the message brief but clear, instructing them to write, "Leader Sue, come and fire the cannon tonight." Although the message was short, it carried an air of importance that Kei seemed rather proud of. As one of the cultivators observed his confident demeanor, they couldn't help but comment on how gifted Kei truly was. However, they reminded him that they needed to write his name on the card as well. Without hesitation, and with a smug grin, Kei declared himself the Cannon Deity, a title he bestowed upon himself without a hint of irony, fully confident that it reflected his unparalleled abilities and accomplishments. The cultivators were concerned and asked Leader Sue that Kei had used all the dark iron to construct the cannon. She told them that she had permitted him to take anything that he required, as he was the one helping them out of their troubles after so long, so she considered it a kind of consolation for them. The elders that went to Kei were disappointed to see the cannon, as it seemed like an ordinary weapon used in wars. He claimed that he could destroy the mountain. Leader Sue permitted, as no one lived there except some wild animals. The elders were adamant that the mountain was so far away, and it would only make a dent on it, even if he tried. He then claimed that they were going to test it. He inserted the spirit stone, and the elders were left confused, as that is not how the cannon worked. It started to sizzle, rumble, and within a few seconds the whole mountain turned into dust. The cultivators were left speechless. The system awarded him acting tough points. He said that he would withdraw the Spirit Stone. Kye asked his fellow cultivators if they were satisfied with the Lord-powered cannon, and they surprisingly asked him if it was really forged by him, and that too overnight. He nodded, and they were amazed by his talent. He then instructed that to fire the cannon, they would require only Spirit Stones, and hence the materials were limited. He would only be able to make 2 more cannons, and it would solve all the troubles caused by the demonic sects. They were amazed by his claims. They respectfully thanked him, and said that they would never forget his great grace, and anything the Great Change sect could do for them would do their best, even at the cost of their entire sect. Leader Su personally thanked him. He pleasantly smiled, and added that they were welcome. The next morning he woke up fresh and decided to return to the withered forest, and kill 6 more demons, so he could upgrade the system, and find a way to revive Jia. Just when he was about to leave, he heard people chanting and asking for Spirit Stones and threatening their lives if they refused to give it to them. Kay commented that the barking of the dogs was making his morning unpleasant, to which the people of the demonic sect started cursing him. He then ruthlessly shut his mouth with his hand. A fierce battle erupted, and Kay skillfully took down many opponents, his strength and precision unmatched. The system rewarded him with 40 acting tough points, and 50,000 experience points for killing a cultivator at the Golden Core stage. In the midst of the chaos, a cultivator from the wind-chasing sect stood up, anger clear in his eyes, and demanded to know why Q had killed so many of their apprentices, when they had done nothing to provoke him. Kay dismissed the question with a smirk, mocking the name of their sect, and claiming that only fools would chase the wind. The cultivator, clearly offended, tried to argue back, but Kay added that they were no match for the Exploding Heavens faction. Speaking with a tone of superiority, the Great Change sect cultivators burst into laughter, impressed by Kuei's wit and boldness. Even Leader Su couldn't help but smile, fascinated by how interesting and confident Kuei was. The wind-chasing sect cultivator, feeling both humiliated and frustrated, quickly left to summon reinforcements. While the elders of the Great Change sect grew nervous, Kuei remained calm, assuring them there was no need to worry about the approaching reinforcements. He turned to Leader Su and suggested they use the Lord-powered cannons to handle the situation. They quickly set up all 3 cannons, preparing for the attack. Soon, reinforcements arrived, and a man stepped forward, introducing himself as Peng, the sect leader of the wind-chasing sect. With an air of arrogance, he insulted Kei, mocking his youth, and the fact that he didn't even have full body hair yet. Kei, unfazed, responded with a smirk, saying he now had complete body hair, leaving the onlookers stunned by his bold reply. Leader Su couldn't suppress her laughter at his clever remark. The wind-chasing sect cultivators, noticing the cannons, laughed and ridiculed them, dismissing them as nothing more than toys. One of them sarcastically suggested they were preparing for a fireworks show. Sect leader Peng, confident and dismissive, declared that he was giving the Great Change sect a chance to back down. If the cannons even scratched one of his apprentices, he would spare their lives. Kuei, feeling a sense of déjà vu, recognized the familiar pattern sect leaders always positioned themselves in front of their followers, only to be defeated. Amused, Kei confidently declared that Peng's tough act wouldn't work this time. Without further hesitation, he ordered the cannons to be fired. The cannons roared to life, and the fire tore through the battlefield with incredible force. The cultivators from the wind-chasing sect were left in shock as the flames pierced through Peng's body, severing his right arm. The once proud sect leader, who had mocked the cannons just moments earlier, was now writhing in pain and disbelief. The wind-chasing sect's forces stood frozen, realizing too late that they had severely underestimated both Kerr and the newfound strength of the Great Change sect. The leader cried out in pain, his voice echoing through the air as the intense force of the cannon's power hit him. Kuei, standing nearby, quickly assessed the situation and exclaimed that the power had been set too high. In a teasing manner, he apologized for the collateral damage that had resulted from the blast. Despite the chaos, Kerr remained calm, and with a gesture, he instructed Leader Su and the elders to operate the cannon. They were 3 in number, and Kuei knew that they would need to practice using the weapon if they were to stand a chance when he was no longer around to assist them. Initially, the elders hesitated. They were not accustomed to handling such a powerful weapon and were unsure of their ability to control it. But after a moment, they took their positions and fired the cannon. The blast exploded with immense force, but despite the tremendous explosion, the leader had managed to escape, narrowly avoiding the full impact. The elders, still shaken by the force of the cannon, claimed that when the wind-chasing sect returned, they would fight them to the last man. Their words held a sense of determination, though they also knew that it was not going to be an easy fight. Kei, observing their resolve, placed his hand gently over Leader Su's hand, offering a reassuring touch. He looked her in the eyes and promised that the wind-chasing sect would not be returning. With an air of finality, Kay fired another cannon towards the leader, and this time the blast was devastating. The leader was completely destroyed, his form reduced to dust in an instant. Kay stood silently for a moment, his face reflecting the gravity of the act. He then expressed with confidence that no one would dare to harass them again. Leader Su, though grateful, only nodded politely and thanked him for his actions. As she did so, the system, ever vigilant, rewarded Kay with experience points for his success. Kay was taken aback by this, as he had not realized that using the cannon to eliminate a target could grant him such rewards. The realization struck him that perhaps there was more to the cannon and the system than he had initially understood. In that moment, a flash of memory appeared before his eyes. Zia's happy face, filled with joy and hope, emerged in his mind. A wave of longing washed over him as he remembered her smile. He excused himself from the scene, telling the others that he had an urgent matter to attend to and would be leaving for a while. His primary goal was clear. He needed to upgrade the system to find a way to revive Zia. Without another word, Kay disappeared into thin air. Kay arrived at a desolate spot, far from the bustle of the earlier confrontation. Here, he had the privacy he needed to carry out his plans. He activated the system's free upgrade and waited as the process completed. The system level rose to 2, and with it came a host of new features. One of the most notable additions was the system mall, which now offered new commodities for Kay to purchase. Determined to find a way to bring Zia back, Kay immediately commanded the system to search for methods of resurrection. The system complied, sifting through its vast database. After a brief moment, it notified him that the easiest method for resurrection, given his current stage, was the 9 Revolutions Revival Fluid prescription. This particular formula was known for its ability to nourish the soul of the dead and restore it to life. Not only would it bring the soul back, but it could also reshape the body, bestowing the revived person with the chaotic physique of the 5 elements, though this outcome was not guaranteed. The system continued to explain that the main ingredients for the prescription included Genesis metal herbs, Genesis wood herbs, Genesis water herbs, Genesis fire herbs, and Genesis earth herbs. Additionally, the excipient required for the formula was the living holy water. However, Kuei's attention was immediately drawn to the price. The prescription would cost 2,000 acting tough points. The amount seemed staggering, and for a moment, Kuei remained frozen in place, his mind racing with the implications. He was dazzled by the sheer difficulty of acquiring such a rare and expensive item, unsure of how to proceed. The reality of the situation sank in, and he knew that he would need to take decisive action if he hoped to gather the necessary resources to revive Zia. The path ahead was uncertain, but Kuei was resolved. He would do whatever it took. This price was just for the prescription itself. The ingredients were not included in that price. Once Kuei had made the purchase, the system would guide him to the locations where he could find the necessary components. There was no turning back now. His resolve was unwavering, his determination to bring Zia back stronger than ever. The cost, whether 20,000 or even 200,000 points, did not matter. Nothing mattered more than resurrecting Zia. Without hesitation, he made the purchase. The system immediately activated and began searching, sifting through vast amounts of data to identify the locations of the ingredients. A moment later, it provided him with a detailed report. The Genesis fire herbs, which were essential to the recipe, grew in places rich with the spiritual chi of fire. According to the system, the most potent source of such spiritual chi could be found deep within the Dragon Vein, in the eastern suburbs of the Fire Nation. The Genesis metal herbs, on the other hand, thrived in areas saturated with the chi of metal, which the system identified as being deep within the Dragon Vein in the southern suburbs of the Metal Nation. The Genesis wood herbs, tied to the chi of wood, were located within the Dragon Vein in the western suburbs of the Wood Nation. As Kerr absorbed the information, his mind raced. He realized that the Dragon Vein in the eastern suburbs of the Fire Nation, specifically the one associated with the Fire Nation, led to the Imperial Tomb, a place steeped in danger, full of ancient traps and restrictive spells. The tomb housed the remains of past emperors, and it was a place so forbidden that even the current emperor dared not set foot there. It wasn't just the Fire Nation's tombs that posed a threat, but the Imperial tombs of all 5 nations. Each tomb, with its own set of powerful defenses, would be a formidable challenge. The risk of death was high, and the journey was fraught with peril. Ko felt a pang of frustration and asked the system for an alternative. He didn't want to risk his life, especially not for something as elusive as these rare herbs. The system's response was cryptic and cold. The Genesis herbs were essences of the Imperial tombs. Once the herbs were collected, the national fate would be ended, the system warned. It continued to explain that the journey was dangerous and risky, urging Kye to work harder on his cultivation stage. But Kye's irritation flared. He wasn't in the mood for the system's cryptic advice. He had a goal, and the thought of the herbs being locked away in dangerous places only fueled his determination further. At least he had the way to revive Jia, and he had found his direction. He didn't have time to dwell on the system's words. There was no point in getting angry with it. It wasn't intentionally deceiving him. It simply followed its own logic. He had no affection for the 5 nations, and certainly not for their imperial tombs. Even if he had to ruin their dragon veins to get the herbs, the only ones who would suffer would be the imperial households. The common people would remain untouched. His mind burned with a resolve that was unshakable. He didn't care if these were the imperial tombs of the 5 nations. Nobody was going to stop him from reviving Xia. A surge of memories rushed through his mind. He remembered the pain of betrayal when the former owner of his body had been deceived by the Fire Nation's emperor. Lured into the imperial palace under false pretenses, the emperor had tricked him into starting cultivation there. The emperor's daughter, the princess, had absorbed all the cultivation achievements of the emperor's son-in-law. Even his precious heavenly fire spiritual boot had been stolen from him. A cold fury boiled within him, an anger that had been building for years. It was right about time to go back to the Fire Nation. The time had come to confront those who had wronged him, and to take what was rightfully his. He thought of the emperor and the princess, of the injustice he had suffered, and a dark determination filled his heart. The emperor and the princess would not see him coming. Neither would the emperor's son-in-law. Kye, the man who had once been cheated, was returning stronger and more dangerous than ever, and this time he wasn't going to let anyone stand in his way. Back at the Great Change Sect, the atmosphere was quiet and still. Leader Su held the letter Kye had left behind. The parchment was delicate, the ink still fresh as her fingers traced the words written in a familiar, hurried hand. Her heart skipped a beat as she read through the contents. Leader Su's hands trembled as she held the letter, her gaze lingering on the last few words, her mind racing. She didn't want to believe Kye was gone, and he had left without a word of explanation, leaving behind only the cryptic letter. The room felt suffocating, as if the walls were closing in on her, and the absence of Kye weighed heavily on her heart. The warmth of his presence, his steady breathing, the way his body had felt when they had been close. The bed, now empty, still seemed to hold traces of him. Kye stood at the border of the Fire Nation, a land desolate and forgotten, its barren fields stretching endlessly before him. The horizon shimmered under the oppressive heat, offering no comfort or beauty. The place was remote, far removed from the bustling cities of the Fire Nation's heart, and Kye knew it would take an exhausting 1 or 2 months of constant travel to reach the imperial city, even if he pressed on without pause day and night. The weight of his earlier actions sat heavily on him. After spending 200 acting tough points to purchase the spell for sect leader Su, his resources had dwindled, leaving him frustrated. He thought back to her face, her quiet strength, and how much he had enjoyed teasing her. The thought of parting with her gnawed at him. He had left too soon, he mused bitterly, without teasing her nearly enough. His mood soured further as his thoughts turned to what awaited him in the Fire Nation. The grim possibilities ahead loomed like shadows over his path. There were countless experts in this land, some of them far beyond his current strength. The Fire Nation's emperor alone was rumored to be at level 6 of the infant transformation stage, a level of power that Kye could scarcely contend with. He recalled his clash with Zhang, a level 5 powerhouse, where he had used his trump card, the Buddha's fiery lotus, strengthened by 2 mystical fires. Despite the overwhelming might of his attack, it had failed to even scratch his opponent. Kye's efforts had been reduced to a chaotic, humiliating escape. The realization sank deeper. Zhang and the Fire Nation's emperor might be separated by only 1 level, but the gulf in power between them was vast, an insurmountable chasm. If Zhang were to face the emperor, Kye knew the outcome already. Zhang would fall in 10 rounds at most, defeated and broken. The sheer scale of strength in the Fire Nation left Kye feeling a strange mixture of awe and dejection. How depressing all of this was. Pushing these thoughts aside, Kye trudged onward until he came across a small town tucked along the dusty road. He entered its only restaurant, a modest place with crooked wooden tables, and the faint smell of roasted food lingering in the air. He waved over a weary waiter, hoping for a bit of refreshment. Without hesitation, he asked the man for a bottle of Sprite, his voice clear and matter-of-fact. The waiter, however, furrowed his brows in confusion, blinking at him as if he'd spoken in a foreign tongue. There was no Sprite here, the man explained, because he had never even heard of such a thing. Kye sighed, accepting the dull normalcy of this place. He settled instead for tea, instructing the waiter to bring a full pot. Some people whispered in hushed voices, pointing to the flag flying boldly above the carriage. The bright crimson banner bore the unmistakable mark of the Fire Nation, a symbol of authority and imperial might. A few gasped aloud, their voices cutting through the hum of the crowd. If the imperial banner was present, then whoever sat inside the carriage must surely be connected to the royal palace itself. Their tone carried both reverence and fear. Kay sat still, his senses sharp as he listened carefully to every word and noise. The arrival of someone tied to the Fire Nation's imperial palace could mean trouble or opportunity. He knew better than to ignore such events, especially so close to his destination. The name that echoed through towns and villages was a familiar one that brought back memories she would rather forget. Kay. Almost everyone they passed spoke of this mysterious individual. There were whispers about his incredible deeds, stories that seemed too grand and far-fetched to be real. A cultivator at the mere core-bearing stage, according to the rumors, had somehow managed to kill many powerful adversaries while standing in front of someone at the lofty infant transformation stage. Such a feat was unheard of and nearly impossible. Yet they claimed he had survived, escaping in the end with no trace left behind. Z had dismissed these tales as exaggerations spun out of control. The name in question was not just a name. It belonged to someone they had known 6 years ago, a young man who had once held a place in the imperial palace. That man had been the emperor's son-in-law. 6 years felt like a lifetime now, yet the events of that time still clung to the edges of her memory. Z's mind turned back, recalling the stories of the young man. Once upon a time he had entered the imperial palace, full of promise and innocence. She remembered him faintly, his shy demeanor, his flushed face the first time they had met. There had been something endearing about him back then, a quiet purity that set him apart. Yet that softness had only been met with betrayal. The princess spoke with a sense of finality. He was dead, she said, and no one had spoken of him since. His fate had been sealed in the cold depths of the underground palace where he had been imprisoned for cultivation. Locked away, unseen and forgotten, he had been used as nothing more than a vessel for the Fire Emperor's ambition. The truth, as it turned out, was crueler still. The Emperor had plotted carefully, seeking to harness the young man's heavenly fire spiritual root, a rare and powerful gift. To achieve this, he had sent Juan in disguise, impersonating the princess herself. For 6 long years the concubine had remained by his side, charming him, earning his trust, and waiting for the perfect moment. When the young man reached the golden core stage, she had stolen his heavenly fire spiritual root without hesitation, leaving him a broken shell of what he had once been. Juan's mastery of charm arts and personation had made it all too easy to deceive him. He had been powerless to resist, a victim of circumstances beyond his understanding. The princess reflected on it with a kind of cold detachment, as though reciting events from a distant history book. Everyone, she thought, had their fate. Her father, the Fire Emperor, was focused on breaking through to level 7 of the infant transformation stage. If he succeeded, it would mean unparalleled power and bring glory to the Fire Nation, a goal that justified any sacrifice in his eyes. Z, however, could not help but wonder. She asked herself whether the Kerr spoken of in the rumors could truly be the same person, the Emperor's former son-in-law. It seemed impossible, but doubt lingered. She entertained the idea of sending someone to investigate, to compare the portrait of the man they had known to the one causing such chaos now. Yet the princess dismissed it. There were countless people with the same name, she reasoned, and there was no need to blow the matter out of proportion. Besides, the man they knew had lost everything. Without his spiritual root, he could never restart cultivation. That was an absolute truth in their world. No one who had been stripped of their spiritual root had ever regained it. Kay attacked some beasts that rewarded him some experience points. He had reached the consummation of the golden core stage. The system also notified him that the heavenly tribulation would start 7 days later. The level was difficult mode. He was surprised to see the difficult mode, as the system had promised that it would stick with him. The system then notified him that he had chosen the ancient 5 elemental arts, which were forbidden by the heavens. Hence the difficult stage was the easiest one. In future he could also get Hell mode, Asura mode, and also 9 Death mode. As he was consumed in it, he saw several men covered in white robes, and their heads covered with the same clothing, and their faces were hidden with red masks. They were looking for some girl who was not allowed to leave alive, and left as they did not find her. It meant that they were searching for a girl to kill her. He was puzzled and wondered who these people were. He then exclaimed that he did not care, and should leave for the imperial city. He then saw a carriage that was lying on the ground with flames coming out of it. Kay paused, his gaze fixed on the distant wagon rumbling along. He wondered if it was the same one he had seen half a month ago at the tea house. The memory felt vivid, a fleeting moment shadowed by intrigue. Now, however, it seemed the men in red masks were chasing it, their intentions unmistakably hostile. A smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. This, he thought, was the perfect moment to gain a few acting tough points. Not far off, hidden behind a dense wall of bushes, the princess and her companion Z crouched low, faces marred by fresh bruises. Z, with an angry expression, could no longer hold back. The audacity of the Metal Nation was staggering. Z spat the words like venom, claiming that the sheer number of cultivators at the original infant stage could only mean one thing. They were being hunted with murderous intent. The princess, composed but weary, responded with quiet certainty. These were no ordinary cultivators. If her instincts served her right, the assassins belonged to the Tian. A chill settled over them both. The name alone carried weight. The killers of Tian were infamously clad in white robes, masked in crimson, and feared across the lands for their unparalleled mastery of blade arts. There could be no mistaking it now. Their ambush had been carefully planned, and survival felt like an ever-diminishing possibility. Z's hands trembled as she addressed the truth neither of them wanted to admit. If the Metal Nation had aligned itself with Tian, then their attackers would not stop until blood had been spilled. Z's voice broke as she spoke aloud the grim reality. Escape was near impossible, and the princess's life had marked her as the target. It was guilt that shone in the princess's eyes. Then her presence had dragged Z into this chaos. She made her decision swiftly, her voice low but resolute. She would lure their pursuers away, leaving Z with an opportunity to escape. But Z refused to obey. She knelt before the princess, shaking her head with a stubbornness that had become her trademark. The princess had often teased Z for this very trait, claiming it would doom her chances of ever finding a husband. Now, as the tables turned, Z could only remark that the princess herself was no less stubborn. If they were to face their end, they would face it together. Her words rang true. Both were merely at the Golden Core stage. Against a group of cultivators at the original infant stage, their odds of escape dwindled to nothing, unless someone stronger were to intervene, someone extraordinary. It was then that Z voiced the name they both tried not to think of: Kuei. He alone, with his heavenly fire spiritual root, could have defeated enemies of such caliber, but the princess shook her head sharply. Kuei was gone. She could no longer hold on to the thought of him like a lifeline. Forget about him, she thought with finality. He was not the only person in the world with the heavenly fire spiritual root. Somewhere there existed others far more extraordinary. Quickly opening his system interface, Kay spent 200 acting tough points to purchase a high-ranked human-skinned mask. The mask's appearance was incredibly vivid, with an almost eerie lifelike quality. It could fool normal cultivators with ease, though it would fail against those at the transcendent transformation stage or higher. Still, it was more than enough for the current situation. He slipped the mask on, his face transforming into one of unparalleled beauty and sharpness. The moment the princess saw him, her eyes widened in shock. She struggled to process what she had just witnessed. How could someone at the Golden Core stage kill a blood python at the original infant stage? It was nearly impossible. Moreover, his fighting style was something she had never seen before. Kay sheathed his sword, his intent clear as he turned to leave. But before he could disappear into the forest, the princess found her voice and called out to him, stopping him mid-step. She had questions that couldn't wait. He turned back slowly, the calmness in his demeanor unshaken, making his presence all the more striking. He asked how he could aid them, his tone smooth and unhurried. The princess felt her heart skip a beat, her composure faltering as a blush crept across her cheeks. The confidence in his stance, his unbothered demeanor, and that captivating face made her flustered, a rare occurrence for someone of her stature. Z stood to the side, silently observing with a smirk of amusement, though she dared not interrupt. Kay remained where he stood, patient and unyielding, waiting for the princess to find the words she wanted to say, for which the system rewarded him 120 acting tough points. The princess watched in awe as the man before her moved with an unusual calmness. She had encountered many cultivators and young lords in her life, most of whom were obedient and respectful, but none had the composure that he did. His every movement was unique, graceful, and full of purpose. His inky eyes were deep, almost suffocating in their intensity. It felt as though one could easily lose themselves in those eyes, and with a second glance, even the most guarded heart would fall prey to his charm. The princess could not help but be captivated by him, her thoughts swirling in confusion and admiration. Z, who had been watching the interaction, finally spoke, addressing him as a young lord and recounting their harrowing experience. She explained that the princess and herself had been on a sightseeing tour, accompanying some noblemen in the palace when they were suddenly attacked by assassins. They were now in need of an escort back to the imperial city. Z spoke with sincerity, offering a satisfactory reward for his help. Kuei, who had no reason to refuse the request, considered their situation. He had no prior ties to the imperial palace, so assisting them seemed harmless. He asked if the assassins were cultivators at the original infant stage, wearing white robes and red masks. Z confirmed it, and Ko's expression became thoughtful. He had heard of such assassins, known for their merciless efficiency, but cultivators should always help one another. With a determined nod, he promised to do his best to escort them safely back to the Imperial City. As if to mark his commitment, the system rewarded him with points for his acting tough persona. Curious, Z asked how they should address him. With a confident smile, Kay introduced himself as Wu Kei of the Exploding Heavens faction. The princess, taken aback by his name, asked if she had heard of him. She mentioned that his name contained Kuei, which reminded her of something, only to be interrupted by Z, who spoke of a friend. Kuei, uninterested in further explanations, set about preparing a small fire to cook. Z, ever the cautious one, voiced her concerns about their position, wondering if making a fire at night would reveal their location to enemies. She also suggested they clean up in a nearby creek, noting the dust that had accumulated on them during their travel. The princess, still uneasy, found herself surprised at the thought of someone not caring about cleanliness. She raised an eyebrow as Kay, unaffected by the suggestion, shrugged it off and offered the food. The princess hesitated, but upon tasting the food her expression shifted to one of surprise. It was delicious, yet Z could not help but wonder how someone of his stature could eat such humble fare. The sudden shift in their conversation caused Kuei to grow skeptical. Something about them felt off. He asked directly who they were, and the tension in the air thickened. Z tried to calm the situation, but the recognition hit Kuei like a wave and he called her Wang. So, it was her, the princess he had encountered before. His voice, laced with disbelief, echoed as he confronted her. The princess, her temper flaring, ordered him to behave. She declared that since he knew she was the Flaming Sun Princess, his rude behavior could have dire consequences. She even threatened to kill his entire family for his insolence. But Kei, undeterred, responded with a dark smile. He asked how she could kill his family members, as he was the only one left. His voice hardened, and he added, he said that he was also not Hua Wuke. He asked her to open her eyes and see who he truly was. As those words left his lips, memories began to flood back, memories not of the man, but of a life that had ended in tragedy. His cultivation had been drained, his life extinguished, and his body thrown into the wilderness on the borders of the empire. But now, those memories had merged with his current identity, and as he tore off his mask, a surge of emotion welled within him. He called out the princess softly, his voice carrying a depth of sorrow. After all these months apart, have you truly forgotten your husband? The princess froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Impossible. The man before her, the one who seemed to have died, could not be him. Her father had definitely removed your vitality. It's impossible for you to be alive, she thought, her eyes wide in disbelief. But Kay only smiled bitterly, his gaze fixed on her as the truth settled between them. The man before them was indeed Kuei. He said that heaven gave him a second chance to live, so he could seek revenge on the Ji family. It was time to end the emperorship of the Fire Nation Ji family in their generation. Z came forward in front of the princess to shield her, and asked him to stop, as he just promised them to protect them. He said that he had a shortcoming to always eat his words, and he was going to kill them whatsoever. Just when he was about to attack them, Z tried to stop him, claiming that the princess had nothing to do with all this. The princess screamed and cut her off, stating that the Ji family did not need to give explanation to a homeless orphan who should have starved to death in the street. If he really wanted to kill her, then it was fair that they die together. With that, she started playing the Flaming Sun's jade flute. The white robe people came all together to attack them. Kay said that her plan was quite intriguing, but it was a pity that she thought he would not be able to defeat them. With that, he activated his bone-freezing fur, and all the men turned into icy rocks, leaving Z and Wonking flabbergasted. He then strangled her throat and took her off the ground. He said since the heavens did not want him to die, so it gave him these talents and abilities, so the date for the Fire Nation's eradication would arrive soon. Wonking stated that if they had not taken him to the Imperial Palace, he would have died of starvation on the streets. He was amused by their remarks, and said that they saved him just for his spiritual root in his body. How could she even think that the wealth and status of the Imperial Palace could still attract him? With that, he threw her on the ground and declared that he did not wish to kill her, as there are countless punishments in the world more horrible than death. With that, he picked up the chicken wings from the ground that they had been eating earlier, and said how bad it was to waste such delicious food. They both, too, sat a little far away from him. The princess then ordered Z to bring her the wine they took from the Water Nation. Z was stunned as she reminded her of the qualities of the forbidden wine. If a man drank it, it would cost him his entire cultivation achievement, and if a woman drank it, she would become the fiercest aphrodisiac. Z could see the determined look in the princess's eyes, and immediately felt a wave of worry. She had a clear sense of what the princess intended to do, but she also knew the risks involved. If Kay found out her plan, he would likely be enraged, and in his anger, he would not hesitate to kill her. Z's voice was urgent as she cautioned the princess, trying to dissuade her from going through with it, but the princess, unwavering, responded with a calm yet firm demeanor. She knew what she was doing. She reminded Z of the old saying that a day together as husband and wife meant endless devotion for the rest of their lives. After all, Kay had once been her husband. He didn't know that the woman before him was disguised as the concubine Juan, and the reason he had spared her earlier was because of the lingering feelings he held for her. If she made the effort to win him over again, to actively seek his favor and even drink with him, she was sure that he would not refuse. Z hesitated, but the princess's determination was clear. The princess then confessed that although her father could not kill Kwe, she could. She was the one who had the power to end it all. She grabbed the bottle of wine and prepared herself, knowing that her actions would either seal her fate or give her a chance to break free from the past. She went to Kwe with a cup of wine, calling him softly as she presented it to him. But as she did, doubt crept into her thoughts. Was her guess wrong? Could it be that he truly had no lingering feelings for the princess, the woman he had spent 6 years with? It seemed impossible, but the harsh reality of the situation made her wonder. Kwe took the wine, but his response was far from what the princess had expected. His voice was cold, filled with disdain as he refused to drink. He spoke with a principle he held dearly, explaining that he would never drink with two kinds of people, dead people and witches. The princess, stunned by his harsh words, found herself at a loss for what to do next. Q's words pierced her, and the finality of his rejection cut deep. But even as he turned her down, his anger simmered, and he made it clear that he no longer wanted any connection to her. He had no intention of letting her back into his life. She was nothing more than a mistake he had once made, and now, he only wanted to sever all ties before it was too late. The princess, unable to hold back her emotions, fired back, demanding that he agree to break their husband-wife relationship. If he could do that, then she would give him the wine. For a moment, Kay seemed to consider it, before reluctantly taking the cup from her. As he held the wine, he asked the system about the wine. The system in his mind pinged with a notification, alerting him to the true nature of the drink. The wine was the core yin-yang wine, a potent and dangerous concoction. If a man drank it, he would lose all his cultivation achievements and be unable to cultivate again for the rest of his life. But if a woman drank it, it would act like a fierce aphrodisiac, only removable by having an intimate connection with a man. Worse yet, if the man's cultivation was higher, he could rob some of her cultivation achievements during the act, though her future cultivation would not be affected. Kay, after reading the system's warning, looked up at the princess with a raised eyebrow. He asked the system about her wine, and it notified that it was non-toxic. Kwe, now fully aware of her intentions, used his acting tough points to swap the cups, making sure the princess wouldn't be the one to benefit from the wine's effects. The cups swapped without her noticing, and they drank the wine. With a sly smile, she turned to him, telling him that he had failed to surprise her. He was still as naive as before, just like he had been in the past. She did not know how he had enhanced his strength so drastically over the past months, but now, all of it would crumble to dust. She asked him if he truly knew what she had just given him. With a pleasant smile, Kwe looked at her, his eyes gleaming with a knowing intensity. He stated, of course it was the core yin-yang wine. He had outplayed her, and now the princess would have to face the consequences of underestimating him. The princess was taken aback, unsure of how Kwe had known about the core yin-yang wine. Her eyes widened in disbelief as Kwe spoke, his tone sharp and accusing. He told her that she was truly a heartless woman, claiming she had schemed against him before, and was attempting it again. If he had been his old self, she would have already paid the price. But he had changed. Now he was merely curious about the effects of the wine she had consumed. Z, watching the exchange, was horrified. He asked what Kwe had done, his voice laced with concern. Kwe calmly explained that he had switched the wines. He added that, theoretically, she should begin feeling an overwhelming heat and a desire to remove her clothes. He warned her that she had reaped the consequences of her own actions. As the princess began to show signs of discomfort, Z attempted to calm her down, but she became increasingly agitated. In her distress, she lashed out, her behavior erratic. Kwe, observing the situation, commented on the strength of the wine's effect, noting that it seemed to be affecting her in ways he hadn't expected. Z quickly intervened, using spiritual water chi to push the princess away from her erratic actions. Kwe, observing Z's powers, commented on his control over the water element and deduced that he was from the water nation. He warned that a woman who drank the core yin-yang wine without engaging with a man would suffer dire consequences. The princess's life, he pointed out, was at risk if nothing was done. Desperate, Z begged Kuei to save the princess. In exchange for her safety, he offered to surrender his cultivation achievements and spiritual roots, even offering to serve Kuei as a maid to atone for the wrongs committed against him. Kuei, however, dismissed the offer. He had no interest in her cultivation or her servitude. Instead, he requested something much more valuable. He asked Z to give him the map to the imperial tombs of both the Fire Nation and the Water Nation. If Z could provide him with these maps, he promised to save the princess. Z hesitated, but Kuei pressed on, explaining that the tombs were guarded by powerful restrictive spells, and even those at the infant transformation stage couldn't enter them. The stakes were high, and the tombs were said to be nearly impossible to navigate. After some time, Kuei had just finished telling Z that he had saved the princess's life. He reassured her that he would go to the imperial city later, hoping she would have the map to the imperial tombs by then. There was no need for her to threaten him. He would keep his promise. As he spoke, he sensed the powerful aura of two cultivators at the infant transformation stage approaching. His thoughts raced. These cultivators were likely the governors of the nearby cities, the reinforcements that the princess had sent when they were in danger. The princess's distress signal had summoned them. Kuei noted that after his battle with Zhang Danshan, he had reached the summit of the Golden Core stage. It had been a while since he had faced anyone at the infant transformation stage. He told Z to leave, warning her not to mention his name in the future. No matter how far away he was, with just a thought, he could kill them both. The following day, Kuei sat atop a large tree, contemplating his next challenge, crossing the heavenly tribulation. He wasn't sure if he could succeed with his current equipment. He turned to the system for guidance, asking for an accurate success rate. Their system, however, couldn't provide one and suggested he purchase more items and equipment. Disappointed, Kuei decided to buy high-quality armor for protection. 3 options appeared: Level 1 armor, Amethyst Golden Armor, and Spirit Visage. Each came with a price, and after considering the options, Kuei chose the Spirit Visage. It offered 55 points of magic resistance, as well as passive skills that doubled life regeneration and automatic recovery. Though expensive, he felt it would be essential to safely cross the tribulation. He spent 500 acting tough points to make the purchase. 3 days later, Kuei was growing impatient. He was in desperate need of experience points and acting tough points, but couldn't find a single wild animal in the area. He suspected that the 2 cultivators at the infant transformation stage had scared them away. Just then, he overheard 3 men talking. Curious, he hid behind a tree to eavesdrop. The men discussed their hurry to reach the Sky Incense Valley, one of the 3 largest sects in the 5 nations, which admitted apprentices once every 100 years. They mentioned that the Empress of the Water Nation had once been the top apprentice there. It seemed there was an opportunity to join the sect, with only 50 contest areas available. Kuei's mind raced as he realized this could be a great chance to gain experience points. The Sky Incense Valley could be the perfect place for him to prove himself and earn the acting tough points he desperately needed. It was a good opportunity for him. Disguised as Cultivator Wuke, Kuei passed through the group of men without raising suspicion. The men stopped and greeted him, clearly impressed by his presence. Kuei introduced himself as Zheng from Lingwang City and introduced his friends, explaining that they were on their way to the contest area. He then asked if they were also headed there for the enrollment task, to which they confirmed. Kuei explained that he had unfortunately lost his way and humbly requested their guidance to the contest area. He emphasized how they relied on their parents at home and their friends outside, showing how well connected they were to the area's location. He politely asked if he could join them. The men, impressed by his demeanor and modesty, thought it was remarkable that Cultivator Wuke was brave enough to venture alone to the contest area. Kuei's composed behavior earned him more act tough points. The Sky Incense Valley, one of the largest sects in the 5 nations, admitted apprentices every 100 years. To even reach the contest area, applicants had to first pass a challenge. Those with knowledge or connections could easily locate the contest areas, while others were eliminated in the first round. As they continued, the group came across a swirling water barrier, which Kuei immediately identified as a barrier array. One of the men explained that passing through it would lead them to the blazing inferno spell array, where they would have to cross a sea of flames to qualify for the next challenge. Upon reaching the other side, they were met with intense flames rising toward the sky. The heat was so extreme that the men struggled to even open their eyes, but Kuei remained calm and unperturbed. He observed that the flames were too powerful to resist with just ordinary true core strength. One of the men, Brother Hua, asked if Kuei had prepared any magic artifacts for fire protection. Kuei casually replied that he had not. Hua then offered a water element pearl, a magical artifact capable of creating a protective cover with abundant water element spiritual qi when activated. Kuei declined the offer, his confidence unshaken. He expressed his gratitude for the kindness, but assured them he could manage the flames on his own. Hua insisted once more, but Kuei remained firm in his decision, confident that he could handle the challenge. The group used their fire-avoiding spells to navigate through the blazing inferno. One by one, they managed to escape the flames without injury, leaving Zheng and Kuei behind. As they sped ahead, they called out their goodbyes. Kuei, unfazed, nodded. He knew everyone had their own approach, but he preferred to wait until the others had passed through before entering the array himself, ensuring no one would be accidentally harmed by him. The men were impressed by Kuei's calm and composed demeanor, with Hua thinking to himself that Kuei must have a brilliant method for dealing with the situation. As Zheng set off ahead, Kuei's quiet confidence earned him even more act-tough points. The proctors of the Sky Incense Valley were discussing the challenges of the contest area. Two of the ladies mentioned that they hadn't encountered anyone who could withstand the heat of the fire array yet, and they were growing impatient. One of them remarked that someone had likely disclosed the fire array's secrets in advance, allowing most participants to come well prepared. She speculated that only a few would be stopped by this challenge. Then, one of the proctors noticed a young man who hadn't yet entered the fire array. She pointed him out, wondering if he had no magic artifact for fire protection. She felt pity for him, noting that he was quite handsome. If he managed to pass the challenge, she would like to associate with him, but she doubted he would have the chance to join the Sky Incense Valley. Her colleague agreed, noting that the young man seemed arrogant for rejecting help and was likely to fail. Meanwhile, the three men who had passed the fire array were celebrating their success. They were eager to move forward, but Zheng insisted they wait for Wuke. One of the men disagreed, mocking Wuke for not knowing the way and lacking fire protection. He suggested they should continue without him, as Wuke was only good at acting tough. The proctors continued their discussion, pointing out that those who had passed the fire array should proceed to sign up. They lamented that Wuke, despite his handsome appearance, was just an arrogant individual and likely wouldn't make it through the array. At that moment, Kuei, who had been observing, asked the system if he had successfully passed the fire array. The system confirmed that the array had been cleared. With a confident expression, Kuei unleashed the flame-devouring wave, a powerful move that split mountains and broke waves. He effortlessly tore through the fire array with a single strike. The proctors, who had been watching from a distance, were left stunned. They couldn't believe their eyes. How could he have shattered their fire array with one move? One of the proctors admitted that she had only used 20% of her strength to maintain the array, and now the path was completely damaged and unusable. The group of applicants, who had endured many hardships to pass the fire array, were equally shocked. How could Kei have ruined the array so easily? With a swift motion, Kei jumped in front of everyone, his presence commanding attention. The system awarded him more act-tough points for his display of power. Zheng, impressed by his abilities, praised Kuei for his strength. The proctors were now in a state of panic. One of them frantically asked what they should do now that the array had been ruined. They had never encountered such a situation before. Just then, another proctor flew toward them, clearly alarmed. He had sensed violent vibrations in the contest area to the northeast and was asking what had happened. His colleague explained what had occurred, recounting how the applicant had split the fire array open. The senior proctor was stunned. He couldn't believe it. Everyone had to pass the fire array with great difficulty, and he had never heard of anyone being able to ruin it directly. In a strong, commanding voice, Kuei ordered everyone to stop arguing, silencing the chaos around him. Kuei then politely asked the proctors where they could sign up. The proctor, still fuming, shot back, asking if Kuei was the one who ruined the fire array just now. Kuei responded with a calm smile, acknowledging the comment in an almost playful manner. The proctor, not amused, said to take things seriously, pointing out how precious the fire array was. He declared that Kuei and his group were disqualified from attending the trial. The men were left shocked and disappointed. One of them quickly said that they should stay where they were, because their seniors would come and punish them. Zheng thought to himself that they were finished, having offended the Sky Incense Valley, and that they would likely lose their chance to attend the trial. Just then, Kuei interrupted, asking if there were any stipulations stating that applicants must not pass the fire array by destroying it. The proctor hesitated and admitted that they hadn't anticipated anyone being able to ruin the array, so there was no such rule. Kuei smiled and responded that, in that case, the situation was clear. He then calmly instructed them to submit down and apologize. Thalmen, realizing Kuei's confidence and authority, thought that he must be of high rank within the Sky Incense Valley. One of them whispered that Kuei was reckless and dangerous, worried about being implicated in his actions. Another muttered that they were dealing with the Sky Incense Valley's proctors and feared the consequences of offending them. Before they could protest further, the senior rushed toward Kuei, prepared to attack, declaring that they would all fail the challenge because of him. Quay swished his sword in a swift motion, sending the senior flying through the air and crashing to the ground. The senior, stunned by the force of the strike, realized how powerful Quay was. If he had failed to dodge the attack, he would have been killed. Quay taunted the senior, questioning if the Sky Incense Valley, a prestigious sect, was truly so disappointing that they resorted to violence when they couldn't win a debate. The senior, groaning on the ground, ordered everyone to shut up and apologized to Quay. His tone carried a reluctant respect, realizing that at least one person in the Sky Incense Valley was tactful enough to recognize Quay's strength and position. The chief proctor barked at the others to say sorry to Quay, cutting off any further argument. Despite protests that Quay was the one who ruined the fire array, the chief proctor silenced them again. Finally, they begrudgingly apologized, though Quay dismissed them as too weak, stating that any fight with them would be boring. However, he offered a deal. If they agreed to fight him, he wouldn't ask them to submit down. The proctor tried to de-escalate, suggesting it was unnecessary to fight since Quay had already shown exceptional abilities, and that joining the Sky Incense Valley would give them plenty of time to spar. Quay, however, rejected the offer outright, declaring he had no interest in joining what he called a rubbishy sect. He was only there to act tough. The proctor, trying to appease Quay, made a kind offer to send him directly to the third challenge, bypassing the notoriously difficult second one. This was an unexpected and rare gesture, as the second challenge had the highest rejection rate. Zheng was stunned, recognizing how generous the offer was. Quay, however, refused, stating that skipping challenges wasn't his style. Turning to Zheng, he urged him to go and sign up for the next trial. Zheng, slightly uneasy, muttered to himself that Quay's friendliness might cause him trouble later if he were to become an apprentice of the Sky Incense Valley. Meanwhile, one proctor still argued that Quay had destroyed the array without justification. The chief proctor snapped again, reminding them not to cause further trouble because the Water Empress was currently in secluded cultivation in the Tower of Souls, and they couldn't afford more issues. At night, Quay and the others finally reached the registration area. The proctor congratulated them and began explaining the second challenge. Teams could have up to 6 members, and they were tasked with searching for a rare herb, the star miscanthus. The challenge took 12 hours, and the team that successfully submitted 1 star miscanthus at the entrance would pass. The proctor emphasized how difficult the challenge would be, as only 1 star miscanthus existed in the vast area of 1,000 miles. The others quickly discussed their strategy. Some believed teamwork would improve their chances of finding the herb. Others were wary, pointing out that nothing in the rules prevented applicants from robbing each other of the herb, making ambushes inevitable. Meanwhile, Quay asked the system if the star miscanthus was available in the system store. The system confirmed its availability, listing a price of just 1 act tough point. He smirked, realizing how easy the challenge would be for him. When it came to Quay's turn, the proctor paused, surprised that Quay intended to act alone. Quay confirmed his decision without hesitation, leaving everyone stunned. The system awarded him tough points. Quay requested entry and was granted permission. The senior reminded him that every team had 12 hours to complete the task by returning with a star miscanthus, wishing him luck. Quay dismissed the need for luck, confident that the task would be effortless for him. Meanwhile, hidden in the bushes, 2 figures watched the herb intently. It was Rue, one of the apprentices from the now-defunct Celestial sect, along with her colleague. Her companion encouraged her to act quickly and retrieve the star miscanthus, recognizing her agility as their best chance. After the fall of the Celestial sect and Zhang Anshan's retreat into secluded cultivation, the remaining apprentices had scattered to seek opportunities elsewhere. For Rue and her colleague, this herb represented their ticket into the Sky Incense Valley and a chance to continue their cultivation. Before she could take action, 2 powerful men ambushed them. One of the attackers mocked their efforts, clutching the star miscanthus in his hand and laughing cruelly. His brother praised their method of using the rare herb as bait to lure other teams into traps. Rue's colleague protested that they had found the herb first, but the men sneered, declaring that this trial was survival of the fittest. They vowed to eliminate the weak, ensuring their own place in the Sky Incense Valley. As tension rose, Rue defiantly shouted that such shameless scoundrels would never succeed, and a fierce battle erupted. Elsewhere, Ko lay on the ground observing the chaos with disinterest. 8 hours had already passed. The system displayed a status update. Of the 8,000 candidates who entered the second challenge, fewer than 100 had successfully submitted a star miscanthus. Q pondered the cruel nature of the trial. The Sky Incense Valley clearly intended for candidates to eliminate each other, adhering to the harsh law of the jungle. The trial wasn't just about finding the herb. Survival and securing a star miscanthus were what truly mattered. The system then notified Q of his recent purchase, 1,000 star miscanthus for just 100 act tough points. With time running out and the chaos intensifying, he decided it was time to harvest these herbs. Hearing loud noises nearby, Quay sighed in mild amusement, relishing the opportunity to finally witness a good fight. The two attackers overpowered Ru's colleague, flinging him to the ground. One of the men cruelly taunted him, demanding he repent for his weakness as though from his mother's womb. Helpless, the colleague pleaded for mercy, offering to quit the trial to spare their lives. At that moment, Quay stepped into the scene. His voice rang out calm yet commanding, as he told them it was unnecessary to fight over a single star miscanthus. The fighters froze, staring at him in bewilderment. Confusion and suspicion spread among them. Who was this strange figure who dared interrupt their clash? Quay addressed the apprentices of the celestial sect, asking if they knew why the herb was called the star miscanthus. Ru, still puzzled and wary, admitted she didn't know, though inwardly she wondered how Quay even knew their origins. Smiling smugly, Quay revealed 3 star miscanthus in his hand. Without warning, he ignited all 3, their flames releasing shimmering stardust into the air. The crowd gasped in shock and disbelief, unable to comprehend what they were witnessing. Yet Quay simply boasted with pride that when burned, the star miscanthus would generate real stardust. The spectacle left everyone stunned and speechless. Quay stood calmly, basking in their astonished reactions. The system rewarded him with 140 act tough points, sealing yet another moment of effortless triumph. The man barked in terror that he should have given the star miscanthus instead of burning, to which Kesh attacked and killed them. He gave one of the star miscanthus to Ru. They were hesitant but politely accepted it and thanked him. Although he hated the celestial sect, the girl used to help the Panshan village, and he genuinely hoped that their team could pass this challenge. A team argued among themselves. They complained about not finding a single star miscanthus for such a long time, and worried they wouldn't be able to join the Sky Incense Valley. Frustrated, they concluded that their kismet was poor, and suggested splitting up later to cover more ground. One of them mentioned hearing about a young man who had chosen to face the second challenge alone. The others found it hard to believe, mocking the idea that he must be frantic by now. Someone laughed, saying if they ran into him, they would make some trouble and waste his time. Out of nowhere, Quay appeared, stunning them all. They turned and asked who he was and why he was hiding behind them. Quay calmly replied that he had heard they were looking for him and asked if they intended to stop him from searching for the star miscanthus. They scoffed at him, mocking that he would never find one and deserved his failure. Quay ignored their ridicule and smirked, asking if they knew the star miscanthus really contained stardust. Confused, one of them whispered that he must have lost his mind, while another sneered that Quay was probably so frustrated from failure that he was suffering from a mental breakdown. One of them told Quay to leave, claiming the place wasn't suitable for someone like him. Quay smirked again, unfazed. He asked if they really thought he couldn't find a star miscanthus, then started counting them aloud. He revealed that he had found a total of 10 star miscanthus. The team was bewildered, unable to comprehend how he had managed to find so many when they hadn't found even one. Quay declared it was time to witness a miracle. Without warning, he lit the star miscanthus and launched them into the sky, where they ignited and released shimmering stardust. The team was left in disbelief, shouting that he was a complete psycho. Watching the brilliant display, Quay laughed, comparing it to fireworks on Earth. The system immediately awarded him several tough points. Back outside, a proctor rushed to his senior, his footsteps echoing through the hall. Out of breath, he urgently reported the situation. News had come in that a candidate in the second challenge was burning a large number of star miscanthus. The senior was shocked and demanded to know why someone would do that. The proctor explained that the candidate claimed to enjoy watching the scene of the burning herbs. Adding to the outrage, the proctor revealed that the candidate had already burned over 100 star miscanthus. The senior erupted in anger, calling the situation outrageous. The Sky Incense Valley could only harvest just over 100 star miscanthus in a year, yet someone was burning them all in one challenge. Another elder, who had overheard the conversation, ordered that the candidate be captured immediately and brought in for interrogation. Elsewhere, another team had gathered, equally frustrated. They were furious to hear that while they struggled to find a single star, miscanthus, someone else was burning them. Word spread that the culprit was at the top of the mountain. Determined to pass the challenge, they decided to go after him and rob the star miscanthus. At the same time, orders were issued to all proctors to capture the candidate who was burning the star miscanthus. The system notified him that he had gained 1,500 act tough points. Q smirked, thinking about how profitable the situation had become. Soon after, teams began gathering one by one, surrounding him from all sides. Someone shouted that Wuke was over there, and the others quickly agreed to surround him to prevent his escape. Frustration boiled over, as another accused him of wasting so many precious star miscanthus, calling it unbearable. Another voice chimed in, suggesting they save the star miscanthus from him, their true intention clear. One team leader stepped forward, declaring that Hua Wuke had been surrounded and warning him not to try escaping. Kuei looked around, feigning surprise. The large number of people gathering intrigued him. A self-assured smile spread across his face as one of the leaders barked at him to surrender the star miscanthus in his hands so they could spare his life. With a calm and mocking tone, Kuei replied that they were all poor souls who had yet to find a single star miscanthus. He teased them further, accusing them of trying to rob him under the guise of enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. He added that this was normally something he would do, expressing a sly admiration for their courage. The crowd grew angrier as someone yelled at him to stop talking nonsense. They threatened to take the star miscanthus from his lifeless body if he didn't hand them over willingly. Kuei remained unbothered, holding up a hand to quiet them down. He casually began counting aloud. 1, 2, 3. He smiled as the crowd looked on, baffled. Then he guessed the total number of people surrounding him. He figured the total number should be lower than 300. Before anyone could react, he grinned widely and added that, conveniently, he happened to have 300 star miscanthus left. He gathered all 300 star miscanthus into a single glowing sphere. The cultivators around him stood frozen, their expressions shifting between disbelief and despair. Someone muttered aloud how hard they had worked, searching every inch of the mountain, yet failing to find even one. Another stammered, unable to comprehend how Kuei alone had managed to collect 300 star miscanthus. One voice broke the stunned silence, calling Kuei a tactful person, and demanding that he hand over the herbs immediately. They tried to reason with him, promising no one would hurt him and suggesting they pass the challenge together. "Don't do anything stupid," someone else cried desperately. "You can't burn 300 star miscanthus." The plea was repeated, the fear in their voices growing. They reminded him that if he did this, with 300 cultivators present, he would undoubtedly be killed. Another begged him outright to surrender the herbs, saying they had nowhere else to go, and failure meant returning home to a life of hard labor. But Kuei, unshaken, smirked as he watched their desperation rise. He admitted that he, too, had never seen the spectacle of burning so many star miscanthus. Then, with calm confidence, he added that it must be a truly magnificent sight. Before anyone could stop him, he ignited the entire sphere of star miscanthus. The crowd gasped in horror, flames erupted and the sky lit up as the light of the stargrass transformed into dazzling patterns, forming radiant characters in the air. Lightning crackled through the sky, merging with the fiery brilliance. The spectacle was breathtaking, overwhelming all who watched. The system notified Kuei of his success. Acted tough successfully, earned 100 act tough points. Achievement unlocked. Act a big tough earned 100 additional points. Title unlocked, frat guy. Benefit 10% discount on system purchases. The cultivators were left staring, mouths agape, as the fiery display subsided. Their shock quickly turned to fury. With swords drawn, they pointed at him, their rage palpable. One cultivator roared that Kuei had ruined his one chance to join the Sky Incense Valley. Another, eyes blazing with anger, screamed for Kuei to die right there. "Everyone, come together," someone shouted. He must still have star miscanthus hidden in his clothes. Dozens of cultivators lunged toward him, swords and weapons raised. At that moment, a massive explosion erupted, throwing everyone back with tremendous force. They kept on attacking, but he remained unscratched, and the system kept awarding him tough points. The candidate soon realized that he was protected by a force shield. Kuei then asked the system to recommend him a powerful weapon to enhance his offensive power. The system suggested Kuei purchase the Sword of the Occult for 260 act tough points, explaining that it would double his offensive power when he killed an enemy at the same stage. The system also noted that his offensive power could be enhanced up to 30 times, but any injury would reduce his offensive power by 1 time for each hit. Kuei was intrigued. He realized that with a combination of his current abilities and the sword, he could amplify his offensive power up to 270 times by using the Soaring Dragon's 9 transformations. He wondered if he could take down a cultivator at the summit of the infant transformation stage with just a slap. The system couldn't provide a direct answer, but suggested he could test it himself. Without hesitation, Kuei purchased the sword. He then declared his intention to test it by eliminating 30 cultivators. Using his newfound strength, he swiftly killed a large group of candidates in one go, marveling at how the dagger was becoming sharper and sharper. A warm current flowed through his arm and he felt as though he had entered the 4th transformation of the Soaring Dragon's 9 transformations. His offensive power surged, and he laughed maniacally, feeling invincible. The cultivators around him were horrified, realizing the extent of his power. One by one, they retreated in fear, unable to contend with him. The system notified him of his kills. Kuei had eliminated 27 cultivators at the Golden Core stage, and 3 cultivators at the original infant stage. In return, he received 60 million experience points and dozens of golden cores. The Sword of the Occult had successfully enhanced his offensive power by 30 times. As Kei continued to rampage, the seniors from the Sky Incense Valley arrived on the scene, witnessing the chaos. They called out for help, and other teams joined in, pleading for mercy. They described him as a rampaging killer and begged for his capture. The senior members attempted to reason with him, offering him the elite admission plate, which would grant him membership into the Sky Incense Valley and allow him to return with them. Kei, confused, asked why they still wanted to admit him despite his actions. One of the seniors explained that they had initially planned to imprison him for the damage to the star Miscanthus, but they hadn't anticipated his power. Given his strength, they now believed he was more suited to become an apprentice in their sect. This caused an uproar among the other cultivators. They were outraged, questioning the fairness of admitting someone like Quay without following the proper procedures. Some argued that he should skip the rest of the challenges due to his power, but Quay rejected that idea. He refused to take shortcuts and emphasized that the Sky Incense Valley should be fair and just in its actions. He was determined to prove that he succeeded on his own merit, not through special treatment. As the discussion heated up, an announcement rang out. The challenge was nearing its end, and candidates who had found Star Miscanthus were instructed to submit their herbs at the entrance to pass the challenge. However, many were already discouraged, realizing they wouldn't be able to find a Star Miscanthus in the remaining time. In response, Quay declared that he would not use the sword or armor any further. He promised to give a Star Miscanthus to anyone who could harm him, challenging the remaining cultivators to try their luck. The teams were shocked that he was not going to use any magical artifacts. He said that he wanted to push his limits this time, and after that, he fled into thin air. The system awarded him several tough points. The other teams were still meaning to kill him. The proctors were arguing, and one of their colleagues pleaded to Lord Hua that he did not need to atone for his crimes this way, if he did not want the elite admission plate. She said to Quay that he could join the third task, and pleaded in front of the senior while crying. Quay then activated his bone-freezing power, and the candidates turned into icy rocks. All the elders and proctors were left dazed as he fled away to join the third challenge. Quay checked his status and found that he had accumulated 5,800,000 out of 800,000 experience points and had 4,150 tough points. He quickly realized that it was time to face the next challenge. He was eager to continue, knowing that after overcoming the 49 heavenly tribulations, he would level up several times in quick succession. Outside the Tower of Souls, people gathered. The tower was the Sky Incense Valley's most precious artifact. While it couldn't be used as a weapon, it could toughen a cultivator's soul strength. The size of the tower could be altered at will, and defensive spells could be set up within. The Sky Incense Valley valued its apprentices' kismet and soul strength highly, which is why the Tower of Souls was integral to the third challenge. The rules of the third challenge were simple. Any candidate who could reach the third floor would pass the challenge. Before entering the tower, candidates had to hand in their wooden nameplates. The nameplates would rise with the candidate as they ascended the tower. Those who reached the third floor would receive the elite admission plate and join the Sky Incense Valley directly. If candidates could no longer continue, their wooden nameplates would be fixed on the tower's external wall, marking their final score. In each round, 50 candidates could enter the tower. As the third round began, most participants were eliminated on the second floor. Only 2 candidates remained in the tower, still struggling to move up. Several others had reached the third floor, and one candidate was incredibly close to the fourth floor. With impressive soul strength, the remaining candidates showed potential to become alchemists or equipment forging masters. One wooden nameplate slowly moved, signifying a candidate nearing the fourth floor. Another candidate, who had reached the fourth floor at the last moment, was helped by a fellow cultivator, who offered a crystal pill to restore their damaged soul. A few cultivators spoke in awe, realizing how different the treatment was for those who passed the challenge. The world of cultivators respected only the powerful, and the upcoming fourth round of the challenge would soon begin. Those who wished to participate were instructed to hand in their nameplates. While many hesitated to enter the tower alongside such formidable candidates, some spoke of Kyo's notorious reputation. Rumors of his killing over 100 people during the second challenge had spread, and many were reluctant to face him in the tower. Some decided to wait until he finished his trial, fearing the consequences of competing against him. Despite the whispers, he stepped forward and claimed that he was candidate 9527, and it was his turn to enter the Tower of Souls. When Ku finally stepped into the Tower of Souls, the oppressive pressure immediately overwhelmed him, forcing him to collapse to the ground. Around him, the other candidates sneered and mocked him, convinced that his earlier boasts about defeating so many people were nothing more than lies. Unknown to them, Ku's soul had not fully merged with his body when he entered this world. The system quietly worked to complete the integration, while Kuo mentally etched the faces of those who taunted him, silently vowing to remember each one. The system explained to him that the intense pressure of the tower made it difficult for his soul to hold up. It recommended he purchase the Empty Sky skill to enhance his soul strength. Wasting no time, Kuei acquired the skill and used it immediately, feeling an instantaneous surge of power coursing through him. By the time he regained his footing, the others had already advanced to the second floor. Determined to redeem himself, Kuei resolved to prove his worth in front of them. On the second floor, the candidates were visibly struggling against the increasing pressure. Suddenly, Kuei sprinted toward them with surprising ease, calling out the insults they had hurled at him earlier. The candidates were startled, not just by his strength, but also by the inconsistency. He had been utterly defeated by the pressure on the first floor. How could he now move so effortlessly? One of them warned him that any attempt to fight would result in immediate ejection from the tower via teleportation. Kuei, stunned by this revelation, realized the strict rules of the trial. When asked about the objective of the task, the candidate explained that the trial aimed to assess soul strength and willpower, which were critical for further cultivation. Hearing this, Kuei was disheartened. Without the option to fight, he couldn't act tough and earn points. But then an idea struck him. With a sudden burst of energy, Kuei darted forward, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. To their shock, he pulled out firewood, soy sauce, and chicken wings from his inventory. As confusion swept through the room, Kuei began roasting the chicken wings. The tantalizing aroma filled the air, overpowering the candidate's senses. One by one, they succumbed to the distraction and were knocked out of the tower due to their inability to maintain focus. Amid the chaos, one candidate, thoroughly outraged, lodged a formal complaint against Quebec. Those in charge of the tower were already familiar with his antics, and it came as no surprise when they heard his name. They knew that wherever Kuei went, trouble was sure to follow. The candidate stormed up to the proctors, frustration evident on his face. He declared his intent to file a complaint, claiming that his trial had been completely ruined by Kuo. He insisted that he could have reached the fourth floor if not for Kuei's interference. The proctors, unimpressed, dismissed his claim, questioning how someone with strong soul strength could be influenced by another candidate. The candidate hesitated before reluctantly admitting that it was the irresistible smell of Kuo's chicken wings that had distracted him. The proctors rejected the complaint outright, finding the explanation absurd. Despite this, murmurs spread among those present. Some quietly admitted that the chicken wings did smell good. Kei's name was mentioned with a mixture of annoyance and reluctant admiration. Others speculated about his origins, recalling that he had mentioned being from the Exploding Heavens faction, a sect they had never heard of. Some joked that perhaps this mysterious faction had a peculiar obsession with chicken wings. The chief senior decided to investigate further. The windows to the second floor of the Tower of Souls were opened to check what was happening inside and to allow for better ventilation. As the windows opened, it revealed sleek, high-end French windows that offered a clear view of the scene below. To everyone's surprise, Kuei stood at the center of the second floor, casually holding a freshly roasted chicken wing. He appeared completely unfazed by the situation, savoring each bite with evident delight. The aroma of the chicken wings wafted through the open windows, reaching the proctors and onlookers outside. One of the proctors caught a whiff of the scent and silently admitted to themselves how good it smelled. Others began to understand how the candidates on the second floor might have been affected. They reasoned that even they might have struggled to maintain focus under such circumstances. Kuei, noticing the attention from the open windows, seemed completely unbothered. He continued eating, seemingly unaware of the chaos his actions had caused. The scent of the chicken wings lingered in the air, and even those outside the tower found their thoughts straying as they watched him enjoy his meal. The proctors, trying to maintain order, politely requested Kuei to stop eating chicken wings during the trial. They suggested he consume something that wouldn't produce such an enticing aroma. Surprisingly, Kuei agreed without any argument and set off to continue his challenge. On the second floor, the remaining candidates were still struggling under the immense soul pressure. One of them expressed relief, remarking how they had almost lost control of their soul strength earlier, but were glad Kuei had agreed to stop roasting chicken wings. Another pointed out that more than 10 candidates had already been knocked out before even reaching the halfway point of the floor. The conversation soon shifted to blame. One candidate accused another of provoking Kuei with their earlier ridicule, leading to the chaos. The accused quickly denied responsibility, insisting it wasn't their fault and shifting the blame back. As they pressed on, a sense of relief swept over the group when they reached the third floor. Among the original 50 candidates, only a handful remained. They congratulated themselves on their perseverance and talent, but their relief was short-lived. The pressure on the third floor was even stronger, making it harder to maintain focus. Yet, to their shock, they found Kuei already sitting comfortably in the middle of the floor. A pan and ladle rested over a makeshift fire on firewood in front of him. Kerr greeted them cheerfully, commenting on how long they had taken to arrive. The gurgling sound of liquid boiling in the pan filled the air. The candidates, already wary of Kerr's antics, reminded him of his earlier promise not to distract them with sweet aromas. Kerr assured them he intended to keep his word, flashing a mischievous smile. The room was soon filled with a nauseating stench, causing several candidates to gag and recoil. One of them shouted in disbelief, accusing Quay of boiling something utterly vile as he was boiling excrement.